Hello and welcome to Too Many Movies, the podcast where we discuss DVDs, Blu-rays, and even the occasional VHS tape. I'm your host, Hal, and with me here today, Matt. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Matt. How is everyone today? I am the number one SpongeBob enthusiast, defender, whatever you want to call it. Well, at least like in this group of podcasts, I guess you probably have.
Maybe. Yeah, it's not really a question I ask people. Like, by the end, I'm just like, William, are you a SpongeBob fan?
Well, I mean, I think at this point, most of everyone is a SpongeBob fan.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they like all of the show or just like the 2/4 of it or whatever, you know.
Oh, yeah. On some level, I'd like to imagine people of our generation are a SpongeBob fan. If not, a high percentage are definitely up there. Like, it's inescapable, honestly.
Yeah. But basically, I just thought it would be fun to talk about SpongeBob on this podcast because I know that you're not super familiar with anything SpongeBob related past like season 4-ish, maybe season 5.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was watching well into the late 2000s, but I just wasn't as I wasn't as in love with it as I was, the pre-movie era. And then by the time the
Yeah.
2010s hit, I was not paying any attention to any of that stuff.
Yeah, for me it's a bit complicated because I've loved SpongeBob pretty much my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is that like so yeah, I was around for the thing is that I was born in 2004. So that was like right at the end of the pre-movie era basically.
Yeah.
But like obviously that doesn't mean that I didn't grow up with those like fucking reruns and DVDs exist and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course.
Which it's funny to me when people say like, "Oh, you didn't grow up with this thing." Like do you not know that reruns exist? Like
Yeah, first of all, reruns exist, but also it's an incredibly popular show. Of course, Nickelodeon was going to replay as many episodes as possible. I mean, SpongeBob for a while was the most played cartoon on Nickelodeon, if I'm not mistaken, for a while, because
yeah.
I mean, to this day, it's still one of the most popular cartoons ever. Not just for Nickelodeon, like ever.
I'm pretty sure it's also just still the most played, just because like literally what else is on Nickelodeon right now?
Well, that's the thing.
Loud House.
Well, that's the thing nowadays is that what else do they have? That's a good point.
Yeah.
Whereas back in the
Loud House,
I feel like Loud House would be the second most played because for some reason that's popular. Why I don't know.
Yeah, but thankfully, I think SpongeBob is basically just like Looney Tunes at this point, where it's just gonna the characters are gonna be in the pop culture consciousness like forever and ever and ever, and it's probably never gonna stop.
I think Looney Tunes is a very apt comparison, especially rewatching these movies and a lot of episodes recently. It's very comparable to Looney Tunes.
Yeah,
not just in the style, but yes, in the meta sense of these characters are so insanely popular and recognizable that to the end of time, everybody will know who they are.
Yeah.
All right, do we want to get into the first movie then?
Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Because I have some takes about this movie that I don't know if people are going to really gel with me on.
Oh, opinion.
And I'm excited to talk about it.
Hold on. You came on this podcast to talk about different opinions different than mine. I don't think you know how this works, okay? I am a dictator when it comes to film opinions, and if you're not 100% in agreement with me, we're going to have to call this whole thing off. I cannot stand when other people come on here. Well, that's what this podcast is for. All right, anyway, so first movie, 2004, year you were born, but also 2004.
Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to continue like what I wanted to continue like why like my journey with SpongeBob, I guess you could say. But yeah, like 2000, this was the year I was born, so obviously I didn't go see this movie in theaters because I was like a fucking embryo or like a few months old.
Why not? That's not an excuse.
Yeah, I guess not, but But yeah, and because of that, I actually grew up with what people considered to be, I guess, the quote unquote dark age. Because those episodes were airing at the time where I was like actually a conscious human being and I could actually watch stuff.
Yeah.
So in a way, like despite their flaws, I kind of do have like a kind of a nostalgic soft spot for those episodes. And then around like I think 2014ish, I just kind of dropped out of the show for like a little bit because at the time there weren't really any new episodes because the second movie was in production. So there was like a huge hiatus up until like 2015. And at the time I was kind of getting out of cartoons. I was into I was getting more into like Minecraft or Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever autistic kids were into back then. Yeah.
You moved on from
So I
one
was,
autistic interest to one of the countless others.
yeah. But I think eventually it did catch up with me again in like late 2016 I think was when I was like, "Oh yeah, SpongeBob, I remember that. I wonder if there's anything going on with it." And that's when I caught up with the show and I'm still kind of catching up with it to this day, I guess. But anyway, I think we should talk about the first movie now,
Yeah,
finally.
talk about the first movie. It's an animated movie from 2004. I was going to say 2004 was kind of an interesting year for animation looking back because it has some real beloved animated films from that year. I mean, maybe I'm just saying
Yeah.
that because The Incredibles came out that year, and that is quite literally my favorite animated film ever. But I mean, you also got Shrek 2, and people like Howl's Moving Castle, and Shark Tale is there too. But Shark
The
Tale,
Incredibles, no, The Incredibles, Shrek 2, and Howl's Moving Castle do not exist. It's just Shark Tale 4 times.
right? Yeah. You're right. Yeah, Shark Tale is the only movie. Well, other than that, there was also SpongeBob. But honestly,
Yes.
still SpongeBob amongst that lineup is insane because I mean, not to spoil the rest of the episode, but this is my favorite movie of the bunch. I fucking adore this film. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, is it as good as I remember it? And then I'm just befuddled by how much I love this movie. Maybe a lot of it's nostalgia, but I don't know. Something about this movie just my cheeks are hurting by the end because I'm just smiling the whole time. It's really something.
Oh yeah, 100%. Now, I thing is, I still really love this movie too.
Mhm.
I do. Like, I mean, again, some of that could be nostalgia, but thing is, like, I still do think this is a really good movie. However, I do think that there is kind of this weird, like, stigma around this movie where like people have such a gigantic emotional attachment to it that there is like not there's like no it like trumps any well in in our times this is kind of a weird thing to say, but it trumps any and all discussion that would otherwise be had about it, because like all you hear about this movie is just, oh, it's a masterpiece, it's like the perfect finale and blah blah blah, but that's all really. And like obviously I know people have reviewed it and stuff like that, but it feels like this is one of the only like pieces of media I've seen where like if you try and like criticize it, people will look at you like you're weird.
Hmm.
And I just think that's really weird. I don't know. I just think that's really weird because one I do think that this movie has some issues, surprisingly.
I mean, every movie does.
Yeah, I mean, like, spoiler alert, this is actually not my favorite movie of this bunch. It's my second favorite, and they're both really close together in terms of rating. But I do think that people like there's kind of a bias towards this movie. I think, and I hate saying that because like I don't want to ruin anyone's fun and all that,
No,
but
of course,
it
but
just
that is
it really does
correct.
feel like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, you got like I said, I grew up with this movie. I'm incredibly nostalgic for it. Maybe a lot of my love for it is nostalgia, but I don't think that necessarily makes it a bad thing. But you're right. I in no way don't want anybody to not criticize it.
yeah.
that is yeah, you should not be shaming people if they have legitimate criticisms for this movie because guess what? Every film is going to have criticisms towards it. That's just the
Yeah.
reality of it. Like even some of my favorite films of all time, whether I've talked about them yet on the podcast or not, have issues, and I'm willing to acknowledge those issues, but sometimes those issues just don't bother me. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, "Oh, those issues, they don't exist." It's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
That is how I kind of feel about both this movie and the next one we're going to be talking about. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
they have issues, but they're not like really bothersome ones.
No, yeah, I have my issues with the second one, but I think overall, I think it still works. But yeah, we'll get to that. Yeah, we're just focusing on the
Yeah,
first one right now.
yeah. But I mean, I guess before I say what I think my criticism of this movie are, I should be positive on it at least
Yeah.
because everyone else is. I will say that this movie has gorgeous animation, first of all.
Yeah.
Um,
I personally think this is the best SpongeBob animation I've ever seen. Like, I think out of all things I've seen of SpongeBob related, this is probably some of the best I've ever seen of the show.
Honestly, yeah, I can see that. The thing with SpongeBob is that since it's such like an artist-driven show, much like Looney Tunes, like what we were talking about,
Yeah.
they've gone through like so many different like not necessarily different styles, but like different interpretations of the same style. So you have like, season one, which is like really kind of like rough looking and like the characters are like it's a lot darker because like it was animated with cells and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And then you
yeah.
have like the middle seasons, which are just kind of stiff and like even like weird and even gross looking at times.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you have like the recent seasons, which are definitely a lot more Looney Tunes ish, like heavily exaggerated and stuff like that. And so that's kind of the reasons why I love SpongeBob so much. It's because it's gone through like so many different things that it feels like it never really gets stale. Like other long running cartoons, like Family Guy and The Simpsons. I mean, they kind of just stay the same for the whole thing. Like there might be slight changes, but they just kind of have the same style for
Right.
their entire run.
Yeah, and or it just doesn't do a good job adapting to the digital era. So now
Yeah.
it just looks, even though you can make great animation on a computer, but Family Guy and Simpsons didn't get the memo on that, so they just look very static, very
Yeah.
very lame looking, I'll say. Just
Yeah.
ugh.
Well, I mean, to be fair, like those shows aren't trying to like go for the whole animated thing,
No.
but it is still like something to notice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll give SpongeBob this. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the middle stuff. Yeah, like that's kind of the reason I stopped watching it as religiously was I wasn't really a fan of the modern and more cleaner looking animation. I've seen clips of it in recent years, and it's trying to go for more of a wacky style. And I guess
Yeah.
I do appreciate that more than the rigid and gross looking animation of the middle seasons because that was one of the biggest criticisms towards that era was just how gross a lot of the animation looked.
Yeah.
Not the animation itself, but the stuff they showed on the show, where it's just like, how is this fun?
Yeah.
How is this funny? It's just disgusting.
Honestly, like sometimes I think it can be funny, but I think it has to be done pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, going back to the movie's animation,
Mhm.
which I feel like so far we've like literally just been talking about everything surrounding the show and not the
I mean,
movie.
SpongeBob is such a huge phenomenon at this point that I kind of predicted we'd be talking about a lot of other elements than just the stuff regarding the movies. But it's totally
Yeah,
fine
yeah.
because I feel like the movie. Yeah, we can go a little into the movie. But yeah, so you were gonna say though?
Yeah, the movie's animation, honestly, it kind of feels like the closest to like the modern wacky animation that they got before this time. Probably because this is a movie and they
Yes,
have more budget and
they were
stuff
able
like
to
that.
do a lot more. Yeah, so I definitely noticed that there were a lot of great facial expressions in this movie.
That also leads to like the fact. I mean, I said this on my letterbox thing, but like just every scene has at least like one meme or like one reaction image of some kind.
Yeah, that's another thing with SpongeBob as a whole. I know we're trying to get back into the movie, but SpongeBob as a whole, the memes are insane. The stranglehold this franchise has on meme culture is
Yeah.
it is incredible. It is unfathomable, in fact. It's unmatched. I can't think of another show on this level that has this many memes come out of it.
Yeah. Like, maybe Simpsons is a runner-up, but it certainly
Yeah.
doesn't have as
Oh
many
no.
iconic
Yeah.
memes as
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
And I love The Simpsons, and I love Simpsons memes. Some of my favorite memes of all time are Simpsons memes because some of them are really, really good. But yeah, the quantity, it has to go to SpongeBob. It's the amount of fucking.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just we have a screenshot of a face, and that's the meme, but it still counts, you know.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is the the part where, like, uh, SpongeBob and Patrick wake up drunk, and then SpongeBob shows up at the Krusty Krab, and he just starts berating Mr. Krabs. That's always been one of my favorite scenes.
I
And,
am
like, that is the scene
100% man.
yeah. One of the faces that he makes in that scene is a meme.
Yeah. The fucking swapped image of SpongeBob's face on Mr. Krabs' face and then Mr. Krabs' face on SpongeBob's face.
Yeah.
I got something to say to you.
It's great. And, something else about this movie that I think is really interesting is that Plankton is the main villain.
Mm.
Now, the thing is that, nowadays that wouldn't be surprising, right? Because, like, it feels like Plankton's always been the villain.
Yeah.
But when this movie came out, they only had the first 3 seasons to work with. And I actually didn't realize until recently just how, like, little Plankton appears in the early seasons compared to, like, later. Like, he didn't have that many episodes, like, dedicated to him as he does now.
Right.
So I think it's interesting. I mean, I guess if they had to choose a villain character, it would probably just be Plankton anyway, because they already had him.
Because
But
he definitely
it's
still
just interesting to me.
he definitely still played an antagonistic role on the show. But yeah, it was definitely more so for comedic effect. Whereas now you have a movie, you're in a cinematic medium, you're gonna heighten the tension a little bit. So you're just gonna make him a
Yeah.
straight up bad guy. I mean, still keeping the comedy because Plankton is hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Daddy, yes.
Daddy, no. Daddy, yes. Yeah, no, and he works really well because he has that established role as already kind of an antagonist on the show. But it is a lot more tense because he's actually winning this time. Like he's actually getting
Yeah.
his plans are actually working this time. Plan Z.
Yeah.
I love Plan Z.
And I don't think people realize this, but, like, in this movie, like, Plankton actually does get the secret formula.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the thing is that really thinking about it and watching a lot more of these movies is that he does get the secret formula a couple of times throughout these movies. But this one especially,
Yeah.
I mean, by the time Sponge on the Run happens, it's like, oh, he got the secret formula again. But like here, yeah, this was kind of a huge deal. Like he finally got the secret formula.
Yeah.
I mean, we still don't know what it is, but that's kind of the point.
It's love.
Yeah.
I mean that's a joke in the next movie, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that was such a huge deal. Again, that adds to the cinematic element of this movie. This genuinely feels like a movie version of the show, which is
Yeah.
that we've talked about plenty of movies on this podcast that are adaptations of of shows. Well, the only one I can really think of right now is Bob's Burgers. But the thing with Bob's Burgers is that it's a good movie. I like the Bob's Burgers movie, but it just kind of feels like an extended episode of the show. Like
Yeah, that's the thing with, like, both this and Sponge Out of Water. They actually feel like cinematic in a way, like movies.
Yeah, this feels like holy shit. We're kind of upping the ante now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate
That's a
that.
similar problem that I think, like, the Powerpuff Girls movie had, but I haven't watched that movie in a long time.
I've never seen it. It's been forever since I've seen Powerpuff Girls. Actually, that's not true. William one night during a wheel night showed us the fucking Beat Alls episode where where all the villains become the Beatles. That's a great episode.
Yeah. But yeah, and I guess we can't talk about this movie without talking about the fact that there's just this weird new King Neptune character, even though they already had King Neptune
Well, see,
as a character.
that's another thing that has really, for me, has more to do with the show in general. The show in general just has no continuity. I remember figuring that out early on, just being like, oh, they're just not doing, they're just not calling back to any of the previous stuff. They're just kind of making it up as they go along,
Yeah.
which I was fine. Which is why the thing people always say where they're like, oh yeah, the movie is the series finale, you know, this is supposed to happen after the show. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this has
Yeah.
the show has never been consistent. I don't know what makes the movie
Yeah.
stand out any more so. I think it's
And you
just
want to
another
know
thing.
a fun fact? In one of the episodes in season 10, there are some background Easter eggs of stuff from the movie. So I feel like even they don't really hold on to
Yeah, well,
that the movie comes after everything
I
else.
remember there was a time when I definitely started to really realize where I'm like, okay, they're never gonna be consistent with the show, and that was, I think it was, I want to say it was during Truth or Square, where they were kind of hyping it up as like, oh, it's a clip show, and I was like, oh, we're gonna see them call back to stuff, and then they play throughout the episode, and they're just like,
They just
they just make
they
shit up.
just
Yeah,
yeah.
there's that one scene where SpongeBob's like, "Remember when Sandy and I got married?" I'm like, "No, I don't remember that." And then they just play a clip, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, you're just making shit up now." So yeah, that I
uh
I was kind of annoyed at the time. I've gotten over it, where I'm like, I don't really need them to remain consistent with previous episodes of the past, so it's like whatever. So yeah, if they have a King Neptune that's different than the one on the show, I'm fine with that.
yeah.
Because I'm also fine with it because I think Jeffrey Tambor as King Neptune is hilarious. I think he works really well.
Yeah. Another thing about like this movie Neptune, I guess I'm gonna call him, is that like he's pretty much like a completely different character than King Neptune.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be like this king, but he's like kind of petty and wimpy and
Hmm.
stuff and shit.
Yeah. It's also just funny that, you know, SpongeBob, the world of Bikini Bottom is like a regular town, like a regular American town, but then they just, for whatever reason, have a king ruling over them.
Yeah, yeah,
It makes complete zero sense, but you're just like, whatever, dude. It's a cartoon. Whatever.
yeah. Speaking of like SpongeBob type of humor, I do really like that. Like, um, with this movie, the whole conflict is literally started because Neptune doesn't want to be bald, basically.
Relatable.
Yeah. I also really like the message of this movie because I think it's a message that a lot of people really should take to heart. Is that
I'm
like
glad you brought that
even
up.
if you're a even if you're like a childish person or whatever, and if you like childish things, you know, shouldn't doesn't really define you as a person. Like what defines you as a person is you know?
See, what I love about this movie and how it handles the message is, yeah, because growing up, I didn't really take that to heart. I didn't really understand that. I was just like, yeah, the SpongeBob movie. I love it because it's funny. But now that I'm older and I can see, oh, there's actually this deeper meaning to it where SpongeBob is kind of coming to terms with who he is as a person, and he's realizing, yeah, I'm a little immature. Yeah, I hold on to childish values or whatever, and I'm not the most mature person ever, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I can still use my childish endeavors and my childish behavior to my advantage. I don't have to, not to say that like, oh, I can just regress to being a child and act like that the rest of my life. It's like, no, there are responsibilities you need to hold as an adult, but you shouldn't let go of your childhood whimsy or, you know, aspects that you consider childish before. You can still apply to being an adult, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and what I love about how this movie handles that is that it's not very preachy about it. It's very much, it uses that theming and that message to its advantage where you're like, no, this is absolutely an arc SpongeBob would be going through. And so it doesn't feel
Yeah.
forced, it doesn't feel preachy. It delivers it so naturally so that you have an aspect of the movie you can appreciate as an adult, but it doesn't distract from the jokes and the gags and the pretty animation.
Yeah. And something about that message is that it does really resonate with me specifically because I mean I mentioned this in kind of a joke at the beginning, but I am like on the autism spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And so I generally like things that are considered more childish, like what we're talking about right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, I can relate to it too because again, I'm still talking about the SpongeBob movie at 26 years old, but I'm not ashamed of it
yeah,
because well, it is a good movie. But also, yeah, I'm not ashamed to say I like things that I watched as a kid that I still watch to this day. I don't obsess over it because I think that is something we need to learn. I mean, I think we're a lot more accepting of people liking things that were historically known for children, known to be for younger audiences. We're a lot more accepting of adults liking that stuff nowadays. Um, the difference is we need to be more well aware of, somebody enjoying something for the sake of enjoying it and flat out obsessing over it because
animation written is cinema.
yeah, oh dude. The three words that just fucking annoy the shit out of me when they shouldn't. When it's like, yeah, wow, what a fucking novel concept. Something I agree with and I don't need to disagree with. I don't disagree with it, but the fact that people just use it as an anthem is so fucking annoying. But I mean, I was also talking about just like straight up obsessing over, children's media
Yeah,
rather than uh going out in the world and doing other things, making connections with people, going for a
yeah,
walk, being healthy, other things than just obsessing over this particular media.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think the movie, takes one side or the other on that issue. It handles it very maturely, ironically enough.
Yeah. Okay, I think I should talk about one of my issues with this movie.
Sure.
And uh that's the fact that like, despite the message being really good and like despite there being a lot of jokes and gags along the way, this movie has a lot of weird Deus Ex Machinas where like SpongeBob and Patrick are in danger, but then they just get out of it by some unforeseen luck or some weird force of nature, basically. It doesn't really feel like they do much themselves, which in my opinion that kind of undermines the message a little bit because SpongeBob is saying like, "Oh yeah, I'm not a kid. I went to Shell City and I got the crown." Like, okay, but you didn't really do that much. You just got like really really obscenely lucky.
Sure. Yeah, fair enough. I can agree to that. I think yeah, because I think there are a lot of conveniences in the writing, absolutely. I mean, quite literally how they get back to Bikini Bottom is David Hasselhoff shows up,
Yeah. Yeah.
which look,
I mean,
I
like
I
the thing
love
is
the
that like
cameo.
these are at least like funny conveniences. They're
Oh
not
yeah.
like super
No,
annoying.
of course not. Of course not. But I understand what you're saying from a writing standpoint. Yeah, it's not quite as strong. I still think it works, but I agree it's not. Yeah, this isn't like the greatest it could be. And I think that is because it is a movie aimed for younger audiences and it is SpongeBob. SpongeBob's not known for its emotional core. It's known for its gags, its humor and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative that it has an emotional core and it works as well as it does.
Yeah.
But yes, I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And it definitely like SpongeBob definitely has emotional episodes sometime
Sure.
like Dying for Pie and Band Geeks and like Patrick Smart Pants as well.
Hmm.
Which I don't know if you remember that episode, but that's the one
Yeah,
where
that's the
Patrick like
yeah where he gets a different
falls off a cliff.
yeah he gets a
Yeah.
different brain and he's all of a sudden smart.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it causes like a rift
yeah.
between him and Pat and him and SpongeBob,
It's
I
been a
mean.
while since I've seen that episode, but I do remember it. Yeah.
Yeah. So SpongeBob has had some of those types of things, but like yeah, the main focus is mainly just it's just silly cartoon shenanigans.
Yeah. Yeah. And so yeah, from an emotional standpoint, it's like okay, uh Patrick and SpongeBob being saved by David Hasselhoff, that's ridiculous. But I think it works because it's looking back, it is such an obscure, not really. I mean, it's obscure now. Back in the day, it was huge because Baywatch was a lot bigger back then because it was big in the 90s. And so
Yeah.
2004 was not that far away from the 90s. 2024, the current year, is very far away from the 90s. So,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many kids nowadays know David Hasselhoff from Baywatch and Knight Rider? I would guarantee you not many. Whereas you say,
I feel like even at the time, like most kids probably
oh yeah,
didn't know
no,
him from that.
absolutely not. No, I mean, I had no idea who David Hasselhoff was when I first watched this movie. I'm like, I don't get it. Nowadays, now that I'm an adult,
I always kind of like, because I grew up with Looney Tunes cartoons as well. I assumed like as a kid that it was just like, oh, it's like those weird celebrity caricatures they have in Looney Tunes. It's like kind of like that.
yeah, but then you got to remember, it's just like these the fucking Looney Tunes is from the 40s, and they're just like, ah, yes, James Cagney. You're like, who the fuck is James Cagney?
Yeah.
Like, there's
like they'll have like a different facial expression and they'll do this random accent.
yeah. Or they have like a scientist character show up once in a while, and it's Peter Lorre. I'm an adult now. I've seen Casablanca. I know who Peter Lorre is now, but as a kid, I had no idea who fucking Peter Lorre was. Like,
it's just like this weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can appreciate it now as an adult. So, like in that Merry Melodies, Horton Hears a Who, where you have the fish show up and it has Peter Lorre's face, and he goes, "Well, now I've seen everything," and shoots himself. It's like, I know that's Peter Lorre, but I think even as a kid can enjoy that scene because it's just so absurd to see a fish fucking shoot itself.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what a lot of, like, I guess modern movies need to understand is that like yeah, even though we didn't get the references, like they were still good on their own because they were just weird.
Yeah, whereas nowadays sometimes it quite literally is just the reference is the joke, and it's like, okay, one, this isn't funny, and two, not everybody's gonna get this reference 10 or 20 years from now. But yeah, I love David Hasselhoff in this movie because it is so out of nowhere, but I think it works because Baywatch takes place at the beach. It's like, oh, she's David Hasselhoff there. Fine, whatever. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. And also, like, I mean, even like the end, I guess I should list off like some of the Deus Ex Machinas.
Sure.
Is that like, well, first of all, when they go to the tough guy bar, they just they have the Goofy Goober theme song on hand, and they have to, which I mean that is a funny scene, like them struggling to not listen to it. But then like all of a sudden,
Goofy Goober theme song.
But then all of a sudden, this one guy starts singing it, and then they can just get out free of charge.
Yeah. I mean,
and then there's also the fact that like even Dennis, the guy that Plankton hires, he just gets fucking killed when he tries to confront them.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, that's like a funny convenience at least.
Yeah.
But like still.
But I get it from an objective standpoint. It's like that's kind of convenient. But yeah, I think it's fine because these are really funny conveniences. You're just like, I'll let it slide.
Yeah. Okay, I think another issue I have with this movie, which I can see this not being an issue for you or like anyone else, but the thing with this movie is that, like, okay, yeah, it's SpongeBob and Patrick's story. I get it, I really do. Like, I do get that it's supposed to be just them, and the moral is applicable. Like, everything that happens is like just them, pretty much. But I've always found it weird how this movie really doesn't use the main SpongeBob characters that well. Like, okay, so the only characters I would say are even really important to the movie, at least of the main characters from the show, are SpongeBob, Patrick, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton. And even Mr. Krabs is like frozen for like half of it.
Yeah.
He was frozen today.
Yeah.
But I guess like Squidward is kind of important, but he doesn't have like that many scenes or like things to do. He's just the guy who like becomes the Krusty Krab 2 manager, and then he gets like he gets like R-worded by Plankton's fucking slaves.
You won't fool me. I listen to public radio. What's that supposed to mean?
There was do you know the whole thing with Mr. Beast that's been happening?
Yeah, I haven't really been paying attention, but I am aware that Mr. Beast is getting called out for allegation after allegation.
Yeah, like one of the call out videos that someone did of Mr. Beast, near the end there was like this thing where he like overlaid subtitles over that one scene, but it was about Mr. Beast and like his supporters, and I just found that really funny.
Oh, so the supporters are just like, I listen to public radio.
No, it's like it's the other way. It's like Plankton is Mr. Beast and he's like controlling the
people. We'll see about that.
And the captains are like, I love Mr. Beast. He does charity.
Oh, that's so funny. Okay, yeah, okay, I get it now. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah. That's all I can think of when I see that scene. But yeah, like the thing with this is that and I've always found it weird that in this movie, Sandy and Mrs. Puff only get like 1 minute of screen time total. Yeah.
If even that, yeah, there's that one scene where there's just like, we paid $9 for this? Well, I paid 10.
Yeah. I mean, okay, I get not including Mrs. Puff that much because she's not really a main character. She's just kind of there sometimes.
She's always just kind of there, exactly. But yes, shafting Sandy, yeah, that's a little weird looking back.
And I'm not asking, like, I'm sure, again, like, I know that the movie is mainly supposed to be about SpongeBob and Patrick, so I don't know how much they could have tweaked the plot to include the other characters, but I feel like it should have been at least somewhat. I feel like they should have at least tried to,
Sure, yeah. It just feels
kind of disappointing that what people consider the definitive SpongeBob movie doesn't really use all of the characters.
Yeah, I can see that.
And that's something that I think even like the next movie and even honestly Sponge on the Run kind of do better in that department.
I mean, yeah, they definitely include them better. Whether or not they use them in very fun ways, I'm a little. I'll go to bat for Sponge Out of Water, but I will get to Sponge on the Run when we get to it. But yeah, you know what? That is entirely fair, though. I think that is one of the actual criticisms that could be towards this movie is that, okay, you have Sandy, but only for like one scene when she is a major character in the show. That is weird.
Yeah. And again, like Mr. Krabs is frozen for half of it, so he doesn't really do that much.
Yeah, but again, I still think the Mr. Krabs is frozen jokes still work though too, and especially one of the last jokes they use him for, where they're just like, "Oh, I'll unfreeze you now, Mr. Krabs," and then he just turns into a real boy. Like, oh, it seems I had this set to real boy ending.
I always found that scene so funny because like the fucking character design for him doesn't even really look like something from SpongeBob.
Yeah, no, it catches you off guard. You're just like, what the fuck? I mean, it is weird seeing human characters in the SpongeBob style. I mean, I say that when Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are kind of a thing, but they're different,
There is an episode in season 8 where it's like Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's origin story, where they do have a scene that has like more human character designs, and that was also really weird.
That seems cursed, but I mean, I'd be willing to check it out just to see it to believe it.
But I guess I have one more issue with this movie, and that is Mindy, just as a character. The thing is, like, I get what her purpose is. Like, she's there to be kind of the nice,
princess character.
The kind of antithesis to her father, King Neptune.
Yeah, the princess character who's supposed to be nice and sides with SpongeBob.
Yeah. But I find it really, again, I just find it really weird that like halfway through the movie when like, SpongeBob and Patrick are about to give up and they're all like, you've been wearing the same Goofy Goober underwear for 3 years straight.
What does that tell you?
But yeah.
Worship?
But yeah, that scene, basically, she just appears out of fucking nowhere.
Yeah.
And tells them, she doesn't really, she gives them those seaweed mustaches to make them think they're men, and they like, and they get over the obstacle and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny scene where they have the mustaches, but yeah, leading up to that is weird.
Yeah,
I'm gonna side with you on
my
this
issue,
one. Yeah.
my issue with her is that she doesn't even really feel like much of a character. She just kind of feels like a plot device, you know?
Yeah, upon recent rewatch, I'm gonna side with you on this one. I think Mindy is kind of the weakest aspect of this movie. Not even just from a writing standpoint, like truly listening to Scarlett Johansson's performance, which one as a kid, I
I
didn't realize that
always
was
forget that she's voiced by
I
Scarlett
know, right?
Johansson.
I didn't realize that as a kid. When I got old enough that I realized that, I was like, "Oh, holy shit, it's fucking Black Widow." But a couple years ago, or a bunch of years ago at this point, I watched Marriage Story, that movie she was in 2019, and I made it a joke review. And my joke review was, "Oh, top 3 ScarJo performances. Number 3, Marriage Story. Number 2." God, I don't remember what the other movie I would have said for her was. Maybe this is embarrassing. Maybe I should check. But the joke was, oh, number 1, SpongeBob SquarePants movie. I'm just like, oh, haha, I love SpongeBob SquarePants movie so much. But truly
Yeah.
rewatching it, her performance kind of sucks in this movie.
Yeah.
It's really
I
not
mean,
good.
you know, at the very least, it's not like celebrity cameos like nowadays where like really the only thing it's really only hinging on the celebrity. Like you can still enjoy the movie even if you know that
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
she's played by Scarlett Johansson.
yeah, but even then, Scarlett Johansson even that big? I mean, she was because she was in movies far before this and definitely afterwards. But I feel like she wasn't like Scarlett Johansson as we know her now
I
until
I
after the
don't know.
movie.
And what's funny is when I was looking at like Wikipedia and stuff to get stuff like to talk about this movie, I found out that like the only reason she signed on to this movie was just because like she liked cartoons and she was like a huge fan of Ren and Stimpy. She didn't even like mention anything about SpongeBob
Wait,
specifically.
wait. Yeah, I'm a fan of this one cartoon that has nothing to do with this cartoon. It's like, what?
Yeah,
That's
I don't
bizarre.
know.
That is bizarre. Anyway, I found my review. Yeah. Top 3 best ScarJo performances. Number 3, her. Number 2, Marriage Story. Number 1, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Ugh. Ugh. Oh god, my reviews from 2019 are not good. But yeah, I will completely side with you on that one. I think Mindy is definitely the weakest part. I don't hate her, but she's not a good character, and Scarlett Johansson is just unbelievably not good as Mindy. It's not a
Yeah,
good voice performance.
yeah. But I think now I'm gonna stop bitching because I still do really, really love this movie.
Yeah. No, you hate it. It's the worst thing ever. I agree.
Yeah.
1 out of 10.
1 out of 10 is closer to a 0.5 than a 2.
Exactly. You get it. Um yeah, I think that those are entirely fair criticisms towards the movie. See, I think they're entirely fair. I can say, mean things about my favorite movies. Not mean, but genuinely though, those are all good points. I agree. But
Yeah.
I think even though these are issues of mine, I still think me giving this movie the full 5 out of 5 stands as it is. I really just can't think of any issues that totally ruin the movie for me. Like I
Yeah.
think it is a perfect experience for me from beginning to end, even with the small issues that come up.
Yeah. Uh, Another thing I should talk about is the fact that okay, well, this is a bit complicated because this is something that a lot of people say, but it's never been outright confirmed that this movie was intended to be the series finale.
Mm,
It's like a common thing that people have rolled with, but there's actually been some evidence that they were talking about like oh like season 4 and like new episodes even during the movie's production.
yeah.
So I feel like I think this is my crackpot theory of what happened maybe. So I think this movie was intended to be a finale at first because I mean it just feels too much like a send off, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels too much like a finale for it to like never be intended to be a finale.
Right.
But I think somewhere along the line when Nickelodeon said like, "Hey, we want more episodes," they were just like, "Oh, okay, we'll just do that." But then like at that point they couldn't change the movie, so they just kept it as it is.
Yeah. I mean, that is weird because yeah, I would say like, oh yeah, no, they always intended to keep SpongeBob going. That's ridiculous because SpongeBob is so lucrative for Nickelodeon. Why would they stop after 3 seasons? That's that's stupid. But you're right. There is suspiciously so much finality to the movie that you're just like, okay, why did they keep it going?
Yeah.
But I guess the common ground is that, well, Hillenburg kind of left the show after that, and he wasn't really involved with it until later on. Again,
Yeah.
so
Now that's another thing that like people kind of exaggerate. Hillenburg was still like he was still like an executive producer and
yeah,
still like approved episode outlines and stuff. He didn't completely leave, but he did step down.
right. He did step down. Yeah, he wasn't as involved with it as he was to begin with. Yeah, he was like, I would imagine he would be like Matt Groening, where like, okay, you're not at the forefront anymore, but you're still a part of
Yeah.
the creative process.
Yeah. I feel like talking about like the meta stuff surrounding this movie is more interesting than talking about the movie itself. Because like I mean, like what else is there to talk about at
It's
this
just a
point?
really good
Like
movie. Yeah,
like it's funny.
we
It
would
has a great message.
we would
Like
just be sitting here quoting the whole movie at this point because yeah, there's so many
yeah,
quotes and memes that came out of this. Like every time I rewatch the movie, I go into a trance, but the eyes roll in the back of my head, and I'm just reciting the whole movie essentially.
yeah. I will say one of my favorite, like I guess, like more subtler gags in this movie is the part where near the beginning where Plankton is like ranting to himself, and he just does this like this gesture where it seems like he's constipated for like no reason.
I haven't had one customer.
Yeah. He's just like turning Super Saiyan.
Yeah. Plankton, stop it! I just mopped the floors.
God, but yeah, like this movie's really really good still.
I agree. So, do we want to talk a bit about this Blu-ray I have it on?
Sure.
I have it on Blu-ray.
This is too many movies after all.
Yeah, exactly. I should mention, so I have the first 3 movies in this 3-movie Blu-ray collection. So it's 3 Blu-ray cases, and then it's in this slipcover that just has them all together. So yeah, I have the first one on Blu-ray. Comes with a Blu-ray, comes with a DVD. Highly convenient to own. I think I found it. I think this is a Bull Moose purchase for me, where I found it in the store, and I'm like, well, I need the first one on Blu-ray, and hey, might as well watch the other 2 while I'm at it. And yeah, I think it's a pretty standard Blu-ray. It does have the bits. How like the case is kind of creased out, so then it like I don't know makes it cheaper to manufacture, but it's not terrible. It does have something really funny. So, the quote on the back of the Blu-ray where it's just like, oh, fun family film or whatever. The quote on the back says, "The country needs SpongeBob SquarePants."
Yeah, I was just about to mention. I do have the individual Blu-rays of them, and I'm assuming they're the exact same as the ones that you have.
I think so too. I think I just got one that had a slipcover for it. They're just like, oh, we can sell 3 for the price of 1 or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe I should get my Blu-rays just to have them on the desk while we talk, so I can.
Yeah, that could work.
So I can compare.
Yeah, exactly.
2 hours later.
Yeah, so here's one. For some reason, I think oh no, they're all the same size.
Yeah,
so, yeah. For some reason, I thought that they were different sizes, but yeah, the quote at the top is just "The country needs SpongeBob SquarePants." Like, is this what is this, an election? Like, what?
Yeah, I'll vote for SpongeBob. Don't blame me. I voted for SpongeBob. That's so funny. Yeah, no, I mean, I love this movie so much. I'm keeping the Blu-ray. I know it just came out on 4K recently. So maybe I'll upgrade it to 4K. But I think,
yeah, that's another thing. This movie is actually going to be 20 years old soon.
Well, it's 20 years old this month. We're recording in November of 2024. Yeah. It's literally been 20 years since the movie came out. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I would maybe I'll upgrade to the 4K someday, but I think for now I'm fine with just keeping the Blu-ray. I think it's a nice Blu-ray. I like it. It looks great on Blu-ray quality. So yeah, it's a keep for the collection. Yeah. But I imagine you'll want to keep your Blu-ray version.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I'm not throwing that out. I have like I have pretty much a complete SpongeBob collection. I have seasons 1 through 13, which I mean 14. I think 14 is coming out later this month.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have the DVDs of season 1, volume 1 and 2 of Camp Coral, and then season 1 of volume 1 and 2 of The Patrick Show, which I don't know if they're gonna do more of those, but hopefully. And then I also have like the SpongeBob musical thing on Blu-ray as well.
Wow.
Yeah. So I pretty much have a complete collection.
Well, do you have the SpongeBob Christmas DVD? Answer me that, smart guy.
No. I mean, I meant complete as in the full
the
thing,
full one.
the full series.
Yeah, because I do. I have SpongeBob Christmas DVD. I should mention actually
I know my grandma has like a bunch of SpongeBob DVDs at her house.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever told this actually on the podcast. I recorded an episode on the SpongeBob Christmas DVD along with Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas that I also own on DVD, but I never released it because I was sick when I recorded, and I don't know how it sounds. I haven't listened to it, and I literally recorded it, I want to say December of 2022, and then I just never released it. So it's technically, it was supposed to be episode 28, I think. I don't know, but yeah, that I might release that as like maybe a special, like, oh, an extra episode that I never released. But those two DVDs are
the lost episode.
That is, yeah, this essentially is having to do with SpongeBob. It's the lost episode. But yeah, no. So finally, we're talking about an actual SpongeBob thing on the podcast, and yeah, like I said, I'm keeping the Blu-ray. So
yeah, there's one more thing that I want to say before we move on, and that's that, like, even though I haven't watched it in a while, every time I watch the first movie, I can't not think of that one YouTube poop by Cartoon Lover 98.
Dude, my favorite YouTube poop. I fucking love that video. Holy shit. I remember when it first premiered, like, because Cartoon Lover 98 and Emperor Lemon were like the YouTube poopers I watched a lot in that era. I remember watching that for the first time and being like, this may actually be Cartoon Lover's best YouTube poop. I think at the time, I think looking back, I think it is my absolute favorite. I think it's definitely my favorite from him. It's probably up there as one of my favorite YouTube poops in general. Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that one.
I'm
so
always
funny.
reminded of that video whenever I watch this movie now.
I quote it almost as much as the actual movie itself.
Sorry about this calendar, Marg.
Waiter.
Fun times.
Fun times were had by all. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I guess another thing I should talk about is the music in this movie, because that's something that like people don't really talk about that much.
I mean, yeah, because SpongeBob is notorious for having pre-established music as kind of the background noise, kind of the backing tracks of the show.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's
now,
actually one of my weird sub interests, I guess you would say, is like about all the like the production music that they use, because a lot of it is like unironically really good.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. I'm just saying it is really pre-established.
The tone of the show.
Oh yeah, no, it's they use it beautifully. Like I love the SpongeBob music; it's great. But yes, whereas now you have like you have a bigger budget, so you can afford to make new music for SpongeBob.
Yeah, they do still use some of those tracks though in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's of course Now That We're Men, which that's actually like on the topic of like all the production music and stuff. That song is literally just like them putting lyrics over one of the production music tracks, which I think is really funny.
I remember, because I remember being a kid and watching, it was I want to say which episode. I think it was either for the Great Snail Race or the Fry Cook Games episode.
The Great Snail Race.
There's a Great Snail Race. Okay, yeah, where they start playing the backing track to Now That We're Men, but it wasn't Now That We're Men yet, because this was pre-movie episode. And I remember being a kid just being like, wait a minute, just being like,
yeah.
Oh. So now I can't unhear it, and every time I listen to the movie, or every time I watch the movie, and every time I watch that episode.
Yeah, it's definitely very very interesting.
Yeah.
But now, like, the other like big song in the movie that I think people remember is Goofy Goober Rock, which is a great song, even if it is a parody of an existing
That's
song.
another thing. I never knew it was a parody until I became an adult, and I was like, oh,
Yeah, literally.
that's the funniest shit ever. It's so funny.
Yeah. And then, a little fun fact is, I guess technically this isn't in the movie, but it is like in the credits.
Ocean
The
Man.
Best Day Ever song.
Oh,
Yeah.
the best.
Well, actually, yeah, Ocean Man too.
Well, Ocean Man, but yeah, Best Day Ever is during the credits. And I never knew that because I never watched through the credits. So then when I was watching through the credits, all of a sudden it was just like, Mr. Sun came out and smiled at me. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. What is this doing here?
So that's interesting because, like, I don't think many people know that was written for this movie, but then it just later got turned into an episode.
Yeah, that caught me off guard. I really didn't expect that. But hey, yeah, I guess they used it to their advantage.
Yeah.
I don't remember the episode, but,
It's a weird episode for me because, like, it's not really a great episode. It was kind of overhyped, but like, it's like nostalgic for me.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about the first movie that like a billion people haven't already said.
Yeah, it's good. Watch it.
Like the 2.5 people who haven't seen it.
Exactly, yeah. So that one person has half seen it, but they haven't fully
committed. Yeah.
But yeah, movie 2.
Oh boy. Okay, so I think this is going to be in this entire episode. This is going to be the biggest rift between me and you because I fucking love this movie so much.
Yeah, whereas me, I'm just like, yeah, I like it. It's good. Which, honestly, I would never have expected in a million years that I would like something. I mean, back in the day, I was shocked that I liked something SpongeBob related post movie. Obviously, I've matured where I'm like, it's a cartoon. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
there's really no.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Sponge Out of Water, from what I've seen, like, it did actually win over people who like weren't a fan of like what the show was doing at the time. So that's pretty cool.
Which is weird because it does a lot of things that I feel like should piss me off, but I'm just watching it being like, yeah, it's fun. It's. I think the thing is, it is completely inoffensive. It doesn't do anything to offend me. It's just. Yeah, it's just a fun time. Fun time is being had by all.
Yeah, but I guess I should justify why I think this is not necessarily a masterpiece, but just such a personally like gratifying movie for me. And I mean, the first movie is too, but like this one, I think even more so. First of all, I do want to say that like the tone of this movie is pretty much completely different from the first movie, whereas like the first movie was a bit more grounded, or at least like as grounded as SpongeBob can really be.
Sure.
Is it like it had like SpongeBob actually going through a character arc and a message and all that. This movie does not give a fuck about any of that. It is just off of the wall, insane cinematic SpongeBob adventure, which again, hot take, I honestly think fits the show better than the tone of the first movie.
I think that's interesting because I think I can sympathize. Not with SpongeBob specifically. I still stand by the first one being my favorite, but I think it is a similar thing with Muppet movies to me. I think a lot of people there's always a difference between what people want out of the Muppet movies. People say some of the best are stuff like The Muppet Movie, Muppets Take Manhattan, and Muppet Christmas Carol, because those are very emotionally resonant films, and they have, something that makes them really good stories. Whereas for me, my personal favorite Muppet movies are the flat out absurd ones. So stuff like The Great Muppet Caper and Muppets from Space, essentially the shitpost movies of the Muppet franchise. Like, I fucking love Great Muppet Caper. It is one of my all-time favorite movies, but also it is my favorite Muppet movie. So yeah, I can sympathize because the SpongeBob movie, it is absurd, but it also is emotionally satisfying. Whereas this movie, is just insane. It is balls to the wall insane.
Yeah. I guess before I talk about the movie itself, I should say that unfortunately, like, despite being a pretty good age to see this movie in theaters, I did not end up doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was because like I said earlier, I wasn't really interested in SpongeBob anymore.
Yeah.
I guess I could have gone, but like I just didn't want to.
Oh yeah,
Plus I think at the time I didn't really like movie theaters anyway. So
yeah, 2015 was a weird year. Was a weird era for me because I was not interested. I mean, I was interested in SpongeBob because as a teenager and being online, SpongeBob was the fucking shit. I have a memory of being in marching band, and at one point, my friend, who every once in a while would just occasionally do his old lady from the chocolate episode voice, where he'd just be like, "What? What are they selling?" And we were at marching band practice, and it was like, I want to say 8 o'clock at night, and he just starts going like, "What? What are they selling? They're selling chocolates." And I'm not kidding, every member of the band started parodying him, where they're just like, "What? What are they selling? They're selling chocolates." Literally every, like, I'm talking like maybe 50 to 80 kids on a fucking football stadium are just going, "What are they selling? Chocolate." It was absurd.
That is really, really funny.
Yeah, but anyway, so that was around that time, but I was just not interested in going to see SpongeBob in the movie theaters. I was like, if I'm going to watch SpongeBob, I just, watch it on TV or watch SpongeBob YouTube poops on YouTube. If I was going to the movie theater, it was there 2015. It was either to see a Marvel movie or, The Force Awakens later in the year.
Yeah.
But I did eventually see the movie, and I was like, and yeah, I had friends throughout the years being like, "Oh yeah, Sponge Out of Water, it's pretty good," and I'm like, "Really?" And then I watch it, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, it is pretty good."
Yeah.
I think it gets crazier every time I watch it. I'm just like, "Holy shit! Wait a minute, this is insane."
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about this movie is that unlike the last movie, which they made like after like they finished production of season 3, this movie was actually being made like literally when they were in the middle of the season. So I think it was season 9. So they had to stop production on the show to work on this movie.
Yeah.
Which I just found really weird. But you know what? Whatever.
Yeah, of course. And you know what? I think it's still, because that's the thing with this movie is that at first it just does feel like kind of an extended episode. Like, I think the animation is in a similar ballpark as the first movie, where it definitely feels upgraded to cinematic form, because you have a lot more harsher shadows and clearer colors. But then it definitely does start to feel like more of a movie when they go to the real world and all of a sudden they're using CGI.
Yeah. That's one more thing about like the things that happened before this movie came out. They were really, really pushing the whole like, oh, they're in CGI and they're like superheroes thing.
Yeah.
When that's not even like a majority of the movie.
It's the last like 25 minutes of the movie when they go to the real world and they're in CGI.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is
that's
weird.
Just, like, weird advertising.
It makes sense looking back because superhero movies, I mean, they're still a huge. Well, I mean, we have entered the era where they can bomb like horribly. So
yeah, but like back then, like every single superhero movie, regardless, like made its money back.
2015 was definitely the beginning, not the beginning, but when things started to ramp up to absurd levels. Yes, 2015. So of course they were just like. That's why in the movie, I'm sure they're just like, well, then SpongeBob writes on the paper and they're superheroes. It's like, it makes no sense. It comes out of nowhere. But, it's funny. Like, I think their superhero personas are funny.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to think like the third act is the weakest, and I guess it kind of is, but I still really like it. And
I mean, I was
it's not like it's not like superheroes are like out of the ordinary for this franchise. I mean, you just said Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
That's true. Yeah, there is literally an episode where they become superheroes. So it's like, yeah, but I think because there was no hint of superheroes in the movie up until then, it comes out of nowhere. You're just like, wait a minute, what are we doing? But then it's like, yeah. But then the jokes they do with them as superheroes are funny. So it's like, all right, I can forgive this. I don't know. Yeah, because I think the first 2/3 are solid enough. And the third act definitely comes out of nowhere, but it still has that same energy that we've had in the first 2/3. It's just that, the first 2/3 are entirely traditionally 2D animated, and you're just like, oh, this is what I'm used to.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, this movie, like, this movie is like funny, like actually funny from beginning to end. Not just like, oh, that was a good joke, haha. No, like actually funny.
It is. There's so many jokes. Not all of them land for me, but the commitment to just making so many jokes and gags is insane. Like I can't help but respect the hell out of this movie for going so balls to the wall with the absurdity. It just never ends.
One of my favorite jokes in the movie is like it's during like the beginning in the war with like the condiments and stuff. And Plankton Plankton tries to get towards them, but like Patrick throws like a giant jar of mayo and he's all like, well, it's gonna take a lot more of the mayo to stop, and then he just explodes.
He explodes, yeah. A lot of people have brought up that scene as one of the funniest, and yeah, it makes a fart sound effect. Again, I should hate that, but it is funny. You know, like it's immature, but it works. It's funny.
Yeah. And then another thing I really like is in the same scene where like that one fish with the sandals, he's all like, now it's raining fries. And then Plankton like lands on him with the tank and he's like, now it's raining tanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That was funny. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other jokes. The thing with this movie is that I guess you could argue that, yeah, maybe the jokes aren't necessarily as memorable as the first movie, but they are still consistently funny, I think. Oh yeah, and another thing I really, really, really like about this movie is the dynamic, like the character dynamic between SpongeBob and Plankton. It feels like an extended version of like that one fun episode. I think they were trying, well, maybe not trying to call back to that specifically, but maybe trying to do something in the same vein as that.
Oh yeah. That's what I like about it, is that it's not being like, oh, this is just like the time in that fun episode. It's like, no, they're doing something similar, but making it its own thing, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I just like the idea that the entire conflict of this movie, instead of it being like, oh, we got to retrieve the crown, we gotta retrieve King Neptune's crown. Instead, in this movie, it's just like, we gotta find out where the secret formula is because it just disappeared out of fucking nowhere. And now we have to go find this magic book that this pirate is just controlling our lives through the book. And it's like, oh my god.
And we have to travel through time, and we have to make it out of like a fucking photo booth. And and there's all of a sudden this pirate played by Antonio Banderas who just is God. Essentially, he can just control all our lives with this storybook for whatever reason, and he just wants the secret formula so he can make his own food truck. It's like, what is this? This is flat out absurd. It is so crazy.
It's like absurd, but in like, I don't know if this is the right word, but I guess like a more controlled way. Like, it still works as a movie. It isn't just random nonsense.
I mean, it is random nonsense, but I'm not like hating it at all. I don't know. It just it feels in earnest, you know. I don't think it. I think sometimes in there's sometimes in like later SpongeBob where it felt as though the absurdism was just too much and it just wasn't enjoyable. Whereas here, I feel like, I don't know, I think it's because we're in a movie and the tension is more heightened, and there's just so much more going into this that, I don't know, it's just, I can't hate it. I don't think it's particularly great, but I don't hate it. I'm just having a good time just watching these flat out absurd things happen. And it's just crazy. Like, they go to a different dimension and find a dolphin, and the dolphin just needs to take a piss break, and the fucking Saturn and Jupiter crash into each other. It's like, what is going on? Like, it's insane. But again, I think because it is so out there, I think you're right though. It is so out there, but not to the point that anything is ruined. Like, it's absurd enough I'll say that.
Yeah.
Can we?
I guess, we should talk about the animation in the movie because there's two, obviously, like unlike the first one and the third one, there's like actually two styles of animation
Well,
here.
there's multiple
And
styles because even when Plankton goes into SpongeBob's brain, it's a different art style. When they're traveling through time, it's a different art style. Yeah, but I think it all works because there are these different segments. So yeah, there is more of a variety in this movie. So whether or not it works, I think it's still just throwing everything out there. Like I think my friend Brian, friend of the show, said that best, where he's just like it goes for everything. It tries everything, and it's like, yeah, that's a good way of describing this movie. It just does everything. And yeah, with that is the different animation styles. It's not like Spider-Verse levels of every animation style, but it is enough that it has a variety to it.
Yeah, I've always loved when the show in general like tries new animation styles, like with those holiday specials that are like done in stop motion. Like those are really good.
Yeah, that's a really good and then when they use puppets on the show, it's interesting. It's unique. It's what gives SpongeBob its unique edge to it. And yeah, I think this movie especially takes full advantage of that. It's not just the CGI superhero stuff that all the advertising was on. I think
I've always loved like those types of cartoons where they just use different styles and like methods of animation just because they can, like with Chowder and Smiling Friends.
Smiling Friends especially is like a recent example of how to do that so correctly. Yeah. And I think what I like about this movie is that it's because it was advertising the CGI stuff, so you're thinking, oh, that's what SpongeBob movies are going to be for now forever. But I think it was clever in hiding the 2D stuff, but then it's mostly 2D, so then we can kind of ease ourselves into the CGI, because I think the CGI works really well for these characters. I think they look fine in CGI. So you're able to get used to it.
I will admit that like especially like now seeing Sponge on the Run, the CG animation in this isn't like that great.
No,
but it is like passable.
Oh yeah. For what it is, I think it works well.
This is going to be a weird comparison, but I feel like it kind of has a similar issue to Space Jam 2, which I mean, that's to me that's the complete opposite of this movie. I fucking despise Space Jam 2 with all my heart.
Space Jam 2, but not a good movie.
But I think it has a similar problem where there's a lot of because of the amount of and the prominence of the 2D animation, it just makes the CG animation look a bit worse than it probably would be if they just made it fully CG.
Yeah, if they had just committed one way or the other, I agree.
Yeah, but it's not bad.
No.
And I also appreciate that, Bubbles, the space dolphin himself, he's even done it like a different art style, kind of. It's like pseudo stop motion CGI.
It has less frame rates, but it works. It works very well. Speaking of Bubbles, I mean, one, voiced by Matt Berry, great voice actor. I think he does a great job.
Yeah.
But then he has a rap battle during the credits or before the credits. So that shocked me the most. Fucking epic rap battles of history shows up in this movie.
Honestly, I think that is the perfect fucking ending to this entire movie, because it's basically just ending on an epilogue where a space dolphin and seagulls are just in an epic rap battles of history video. That is like the perfect send-off to the entire movie.
It is wild. It's like I would never have expected these YouTubers to show up. I think nowadays you see a YouTuber show up in a movie, you're like, that's to be expected, because the line between YouTube and mainstream media is very blurry now. So you see Jacksepticeye or fucking Matt Pat show up in a movie, you're like, yeah, that's to be expected. I think back in the
FNAF movie,
fucking Matt Pat in the FNAF movie, exactly. Whereas like back in the day, you had the epic rap battles of history guys just kind of show up in the SpongeBob movie. You're like, that's weird, that's interesting, but I think it works because you know what? Because the rap battle is actually really funny. And I am a fan of epic rap battles of history. I grew up watching them on YouTube, so I'm familiar with them. But I think it works because the rest of the movie is just so out there that it's like, yeah, sure, I'll allow an epic rap battles of history.
Another scene I really like in this movie is like where in the scene where like they grab the wrong secret formula bottle and like Patrick just goes into their time machine and he comes back with just like Squidosaurus Rex. It's like a Squidward. It's like a dinosaur, but just with Squidward's head on it.
And I thought my friends were primitive.
I also like that, much like the first movie, like Mrs. Puff only gets one line in this and it's just for a joke.
Yeah. I mean,
someone had to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because again, Mrs. Puff is not a major character. The characters, the major characters are the ones who go to the real world. So you got SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton. I think that's fair as them being the main six makes sense.
Oh yeah, another dialogue exchange I really like in this movie is where Patrick's like SpongeBob calls out to Patrick and he's like, Patrick, what are you doing? Vandalizing stuff? Isn't that your house?
Yeah, that's a great scene. I thought you were gonna say, because I was talking about characters, that's that scene where they are about to go to the surface and all the fish in the background are like, all right, all secondary characters walk away or something like that.
Yeah, that's also a great joke.
That is a good joke.
I mean, it's kind of inaccurate because they're not technically secondary characters. They're all background fish.
Yeah. You know what? As a quick joke, I'm fine with it. And look, I'll take whatever meta jokes work for me with open arms, because I usually hate fourth wall breaks and meta jokes in movies unless they're done really well, and that one was cute.
I will admit, like, because of all the movies that I've seen that have those like really shitty types, like fucking Chippendale Rescue Rangers and stuff like that, I really have soured on the idea of it.
Yeah, me
too. To the point where, like, even where a new movie does it well, I'm just like, you know.
Yeah, and even when movies from the past have done it well, I'll still appreciate them, like, you know, the Mel Brooks stuff, the movie Airplane, even something like Ferris Bueller's Day Off using fourth wall breaks. That works. I'm still completely behind those movies using that type of humor. But yeah, when it's used as a crutch, like in Chippendale Rescue Rangers, it's just like, ugh.
I feel like it's one of those types of humor that's become so like oversaturated.
Yeah,
that it feels like there's nothing new to it.
Yeah,
you know?
Because it's a crutch for people or for writers to be like, oh, let's just reference that we're in a movie, and then people will laugh. It's just like, oh, they know they're in a movie. That's funny. It's like, no, it's not funny. If that's your joke every time, it's not funny.
It does a quick glance at
Deadpool. Yeah. Oh boy.
But, you know, we're not talking about those superhero movies. We're talking about this.
Yeah, we're talking about a good
kind superhero movie.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I guess it technically is. But yeah, I still think it, even though it heavily advertises the superhero aspect a lot. Like literally, the Blu-ray cover is them as their superhero versions. But again, that's not a thing until the last act of the movie. But I think it still has enough going for it that I don't necessarily attribute it to superhero fatigue. Like, it's just a fun kids movie all on its own.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to justify why I think this is really, really good and my favorite SpongeBob movie. But I mean, I guess you could just say the same things I said for the first movie too. Yeah. But like,
incredible.
I don't know. I guess I just like this one more because it's more absurd. Like, I've always been drawn to more absurd humor. I mean, I guess I don't know.
I am very much somebody who adores absurdist humor and stuff. When done correctly. You know, one of my all-time favorite comedies is UHF, the Weird Al movie. That is an absurd comedy. That is a movie not interested in a story or character development. It is interested in being as absurd as possible because it's a movie starring Weird Al Yankovic. But it is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. So I completely sympathize with, yes, this is flat out absurd. I don't think it's flat out absurd enough for me that's the kind of absurdity I want out of a movie, but I think it works for what it is. Like, I think because it just throws everything out there, some things are going to stick, some things aren't. I respect the flat out commitment to just being out there. It's partially why I didn't hate the recent Beetlejuice movie. That movie, it's not great, But I think the reason I enjoyed it more than I did is because it threw everything at the wall. It went so
Yeah.
out there with that movie that
I definitely think there is a parallel here with that movie.
yeah.
Like Beetlejuice is honestly like one of my I don't know if I would say it's like one of my favorites, but I definitely do really like Beetlejuice
Yeah, I love the
just as
first
a
movie a
series.
lot. And I definitely prefer the first movie over the second one, but I didn't hate the second one because I don't know, just even when something didn't work, there was enough going for it that I still enjoyed myself. And same thing with Sponge Out of Water. I think there's enough here that I have fun every time I watch it. I definitely will not be revisiting it as often as the first movie, but honestly, I'm just surprised I love it as much as I do that I can see myself keeping this Blu-ray. I really just have never had that much of a problem rewatching this movie. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's really something special. Um I I really appreciate it. So I'm putting it in the
Yeah.
collection. It's cute.
Another thing I want to mention is that I remember like in the trailer for this movie, there was in the real world there was gonna be a scene with I think Slash the guitarist, but that's not in the movie. That's just like a deleted scene, I guess.
I guess so cuz I don't remember that. Yeah, I remember the Epic Rap Battles of History guy's cameo, but not Slash's cameo.
Yeah. No, no. I guess even back then, like people like studios were just obsessed with putting things in the trailers that are just not gonna be in the movie.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing with trailers nowadays. I mean that's always been a problem with trailers. Have always been just spoiling shit all the time. It's really obnoxious having to watch through trailers. That's why I try to
Yeah,
avoid them as
I
much as
guess.
possible.
Whenever I do go to the movies, I usually like because I have to walk to my movie theater, and I usually walk for like about like 25 minutes.
Mm,
So what what I usually do is I don't go at the posted time of the movie because I know that that includes the trailers. So
yeah.
I just wait. I just wait the extra time and then just walk and hope I'm there in time.
See, I'm such a stickler, and I'm such a stickler that need to be there on time. But I also show up early because it's just like, oh, I got to get there, so then I'm not in anybody's way. I get there first, and then I just sit there and I watch the same commercials and trailers over and over and
Yeah,
over again. I fall for it every time.
yeah,
Like when we're like, 7 trailers into it, I'm just like, I could have shown up now and nothing would have changed. Like I'd still be getting the movie I
yeah.
paid to see. But
I
I'm instead here
remember.
watching the same fucking dumbass trailers. Ugh.
Yeah, I remember during the summer, like I had to see that fucking. I mean, I've heard that it's a good movie, but I've had to see that fucking Speak No Evil trailer like 12 times.
Oh yeah. It's the worst because some trailers are intriguing. Like I'm just like, huh, that actually looks intriguing. And then I see that trailer over and over and over and over and over again. And then I'm like, I really don't want to see this movie anymore. Like that happened to me with
Yeah.
Bullet Train. I was like, hey, this trailer for Bullet Train, it's pretty cool. Actually looks kind of interesting. And then I saw it like 17 more times, and I'm like, I am sick of this movie, and I haven't even seen it. And then I watched the movie, and I'm like, oh yeah, Bullet Train's pretty good. It's a good movie, but just the oversaturation of the fucking trailers I see. It's obnoxious.
Yeah.
It is my own fault for going early, but I don't know. It's
Yeah.
gonna be hard for me to just kind of like walk in late. I have a thing where I'm like I can't be late to the movies.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, back to this movie
Yeah,
specifically.
yeah, yeah.
I guess if I had to say any issues that I have with it, it would be probably just be the seagull characters. Like
Sure, yeah.
you could definitely tell that this was made in an era where like the minions were just like the biggest thing ever.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
And I think the fucking Minions movie came out the same year, didn't it?
yeah, 2015. That was the same year as Minions.
God. That was such a weirdly like big year for movies, 2015.
Dude, it was insane. Yeah, because I mean, I'm biased for it because that was the year Force Awakens came out, but now that I've grown up and I'm just like, oh, there's more to movies than just Force Awakens.
Mm.
But even still, there were a lot of huge movies that year.
Yeah. But yeah, like the seagull characters, they're just kind of like they kind of lean towards that like I don't want to say like illumination-esque comedy, but just like the just regular lowbrow
kids movie
children's
humor.
comedy.
Yeah. Especially because there's that one seagull character that has like the accent where he's just like, Mr. Pywit, Mr. Pywit.
Yeah,
There's that one scene where he's like, they like, Antonio Banderas is just like, how about some chicken wings? And they're just like, oh, where's Kyle? And you think, oh, he killed one of the seagulls, but then like that seagull comes out of the fucking porta potty, the seagull-sized porta potty.
Okay, that was the only funny scene with them.
Yeah, I mean, it was still annoying because because the seagull walks out of it and he just goes like, goodbye, Mr. Poop, and it's just like, he said the poop word. Funny.
Yeah,
you had something funny there with a seagull-sized porta potty, and you ruined it by just pointing that out. But whatever.
Yeah, and also I think one of the seagulls is voiced by Kevin Michael. Wait, is it? Yeah, Kevin Michael Richardson. I believe
he has such a distinct voice that it does sound like him.
Yeah, it's just weird. Hold on, I'm gonna actually look at the cast and see like who voiced the seagulls.
Yeah, there's a couple that definitely makes
IMDb.
sense that I can recognize. So yeah, someone like Kevin Michael Richardson. Yeah, because he's one of those voice actors where now that I know him, because like I grew up hearing his voice and recognizing it in many things, that I'm just like, that's that guy. And now that I know it's his name, it's just like, yeah, he's in a lot of stuff I grew up watching.
Oh wow! Billy West and Carlos Alazraqui also voiced some of the seagulls. Who Carlos Alazraqui, if you don't know, he's the voice of Mr. Crocker in Fairly Odd Parents and like Rocco as well.
Yeah, and Laszlo and Camp Laszlo.
Yeah, and Billy West is of course Fry from Futurama, but he also did Stimpy.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of other things to say about this movie, but I guess the thesis statement for it is just, I love it. I honestly think it's one of the best things to come out of the series, like ever, along with the first movie.
Yeah, I think it's good, just good, but I can see someone loving this. I've had a lot of friends come up to me being like, yeah, dude, I watched this as a kid. I fucking loved it. I was just like, oh, yeah, I guess this was, people loved this growing up. So
yeah,
again, I still love the first one, but I have a soft spot for this one. I found it thoroughly enjoyable.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, there are movies like that I'm like with, where everyone says like, "Oh, I love it," but then I'm just like, "Yeah, it's fun."
Yeah,
I think everyone kind of has their different.
Oh yeah.
Their different tastes and expectations of what a fun movie, quote unquote, is.
Oh really. Yeah, there's people who find loads of movies fun that I watch, and I'm like, this was agonizing. I never want to experience this ever again. But
that is me with Seth Rogen movies. I don't know why, but Seth Rogen movies are just like a huge guilty pleasure for me. I've seen This Is the End and like Sausage Party like 10 times.
Oh, 10 times? I mean, yeah, I find Seth Rogen funny when he has a good writer attached, but I don't know, man. I don't know if I could stomach him in every movie, Hey, man, I'm going to be smoking weed. I'm a sausage.
That would be really like surreal if Seth Rogen was in like any SpongeBob thing in the future.
Has he? I feel I guess he hasn't been in anything SpongeBob related, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he one day showed up where he's just like, "Hey Patrick, want to smoke some weed?"
Smoking seaweed, like that one Yo Mama YouTube channel.
Yeah. SpongeBob, this guy's really cool. He smokes weed. Hey, yellow pants.
Cheese boy.
Hey, cheese boy, can I eat you? I'm fucking high as shit, man. I got the munchies.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
Also, I want to say on this going back to the Blu-ray, on this DVD, the back of the quote on the back of it says the best family film of the year, which I mean that's just kind of a generic thing, but I find it funny because that's the year that Inside Out came out.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay.
I have to think about that because I'm not the biggest fan of Inside Out. I like it. I guess I put it on the same level as this movie. I like it. I don't love it, but I feel like, yeah, objectively speaking, maybe Inside Out would be the best family film of the year. But I mean, it was.
Yeah.
You know what? if we could say it's the second best, I'd be okay with that because what else came
Yeah.
out in 2015? Fucking Minions
Yeah.
and
Minions.
Good Dinosaur. It's like, those are
Yeah.
awful. Yeah. So you know what? Second best family film of 2015. I can agree to that.
Yeah. I mean, it probably says something similar on the Inside Out Blu-ray.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. They put the most generic fucking quotes on these Blu-rays because you're never gonna have a quote that says like, "Yeah, this kind of sucked." It's like,
yeah, like literally.
I would love it if they use quotes like that. That would be amazing. I think the closest one that probably would do that would be Deadpool, and so then that wouldn't be funny. But I don't know, just maybe accidentally put like a bad quote on the DVD. That'd be great.
I feel like if somehow Weird Al made another movie, he would do something like that.
Yeah, that'd be funny.
But yeah, like I've just always found the whole thing of like, putting quotes from people who positively received them. I've always like I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
But like, do people even really pay attention to that?
Yeah,
like,
especially kids. Like if a kid's gonna buy a Blu-ray or gonna get a Blu-ray of this movie for Christmas or their birthday, and they're gonna like look at the box and just be like, "Oh wow, this film critic I don't read any of his stuff from. He says this movie's good." It's like, yeah, what does that do exactly? I don't.
It just feels like one of those things that maybe worked before, but it's just kind of outdated now.
And they just don't have another way of doing it, so they just keep doing it because, well, that's the way it goes. Yeah. I can see that.
But yeah, I love this movie. If this movie has one defender, I am it. Except it probably has multiple defenders.
I'm sure. Yeah. I think most people like this movie. I've seen a couple like negative reviews on Letterboxd. It's like, okay, this is clearly just adults who don't care for SpongeBob. But
yeah,
whatever. They're haters. They can hate. Whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of anything else to say about this movie.
Do we want to move on to number 3?
I think so, because I think people are getting very tired of me being positive. So now it's time for me to actually rip into something.
Yeah, no, enough of this positivity shit. Let's move on to totally shitting all over the next movie.
Let's be haters.
Let's be haters.
Well, okay, like...
Well, yeah,
okay,
Sponge on the Run. Yeah, Sponge on the Run.
To be real, I don't hate this movie, but... I am, like, what I said is kind of true. I am going to probably be more negative on this movie compared to the other ones. Here's the thing. This movie has a very... I mean, I've talked at length about, like, the production history, I guess, of the other two movies, because I don't really know what else to say about them, besides they're good. This movie has such a weird, like, before production history, before it came out. It's really strange. So... initially, this movie was going to be called The SpongeBob Movie, It's a Wonderful Sponge, which I guess is supposed to be It's a Wonderful Life.
I vaguely remember that.
Movie.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, when it was going to be called that.
However, sometime in 2019, it was changed to Sponge on the Run, and we got, like, the first trailer and, like, the plot and all that. And then the good old C-word pandemic hit. And the movie was taken off the release schedule and stuff like that. Yep. And it was... I think it came out in Canadian theaters specifically in August of 2020.
Yeah.
Because they were still open at the time.
Yeah, I have a friend who's in Canada, and her review is, haha, I watched this movie before any of you Americans did. It's like, yeah, I guess you did.
Yeah. So this movie didn't actually... And another thing is that later in the year, in November, it got released on Netflix in other territories, but they still had the English version. So it was basically released at that point.
Right.
But then it didn't technically officially come out until March 4th, 2021, with the launch of Paramount Plus, everyone's favorite streaming service.
Yeah,
totally.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's how long ago Paramount Plus happened. I still haven't signed up for it because why the fuck would I?
Yeah. But it was frustrating to me personally. I mean, obviously it wasn't this movie's fault or like anyone else's fault, but like I was like, despite the movie, despite me not really liking the movie that much now, I was still excited because I was like, "Oh my god, this is gonna be the first time that I see a SpongeBob movie at theaters." And then that happened,
Yeah.
and I was really disappointed. So I guess I kind of had like a little negative thing about this movie from the start.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to say is that there is like a bit of misinformation about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's about like the whole Camp Coral thing. So
Yeah, I
a
know
lot
where
of
this is
people,
going.
yeah, a lot of people seem to think that this movie was completely like always intended to be just kind of an advertisement or like a backdoor pilot for the spin-off show Camp Coral. However, I mean, I guess it was made to be that way just because they didn't release the movie until like later. But it definitely was not intended to be that way because uh this movie was in production but way before like they ever started talking about the ideas of like spin-off shows and stuff like that. This was just like a random thing they decided to do because oh, like we got that movie that's coming out that has Camp Coral, why not just make it into a show? So like the whole discussion of it being a spin-off came before the show.
Whoa.
I mean, came at
So wait a minute. Okay, so it was never intended to be a backdoor pilot. They came up with the show after the movie?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what the story is. However, I will say that even that it did end up still feeling like they did that when that wasn't the case.
That is dumber than what I thought. Like, I don't know if I think that's dumber, honestly, the fact that they didn't have a spin-off show in mind for this. Like,
I guess, yeah. I'll say my thoughts about that whole scene later because I guess I have very mixed thoughts on it. But
yeah.
I guess we'll just talk about the movie itself.
So I'll be honest. I was honestly kind of digging the movie up until the Camp Coral bits. Not that I liked it. I thought it was a little. It definitely was still trying to be absurd, kind of like the previous movie, but there was just something off about it where I wasn't really digging the absurdity as much as I was in the last movie. But I think there were enough jokes that worked for me, and I'm gonna flat out say right now, I think the animation is fucking spectacular. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
I
That is
think
the one thing that I think everyone agrees on, even
yeah,
people who don't like the movie.
and it's weird because when it comes to SpongeBob, I like the original 2D aesthetic the most. And I like, especially when Sponge on the Run, Sponge Out of Water was coming out, and they're advertising, oh, it's going to be CGI now. It's like I'm a little skeptical to that because the 2D aesthetic is what SpongeBob is known for, and so the 3D aesthetic is a little weird. But I think the 3D aesthetic in this movie works really well, especially with it being a movie. It's like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah.
We're gonna make it so it's, we're gonna make it CGI. We're gonna make it a little more cinematic. Yeah, I think the animation is really, really good.
Yeah,
and I think
it's
that
like
makes
it's kind of like a byproduct of I guess like the whole Spider-Verse thing,
oh
where
yeah,
like they're actually
absolutely.
trying to make it stylized.
Yeah, they're making it stylized. It's not just doing what, because CGI in animation has been popular, I mean, forever, since Toy Story. But then, Toy Story and Shrek kind of made it so then it's like, okay, 3D animated movies have to look like this. And it's like, well, not
Yeah.
necessarily. Then, yes, Spider-Verse kind of changed that up a bit. Not that Spider-Verse was the first one to do that, but it was.
Yeah, like some of the Sony animated movies before Spider-Verse also tried like different things with CG animation, like Hotel Transylvania and stuff like that.
Whereas then Spider-Verse kind of definitely shifted where it's like, okay, no, we have a lot more 3D animated films that don't necessarily look like Shrek or Toy Story. They actually are trying to be their own thing. And yeah, that's what I appreciate about this movie. The animation is spectacular. I would love a good SpongeBob animated movie, animated like this. I think that's what pisses me off
Oh yeah,
a lot
100%.
more, is because the movie's not great and it's wasting away using this really good animation style.
Yeah, and one thing I really do like about the animation is how you can really feel like the textures. Like SpongeBob like really feels like a sponge.
Oh yeah.
And like Mr. Krabs like clothes are like they're very they're like patched up and stuff like that. I think that's really cool.
Oh yeah, and the harsher lighting, the shadows, like the darker colors, like it looks spectacular. It looks great. I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. I wish I liked this more.
Yeah. Now here's the thing with me. I actually did like this movie at first, but it's one of those movies where every time I rewatched it, I noticed something. I noticed more and more problems, and so it kind of became what I think of it now. I guess we should start with the positives. I mean, obviously there's the animation, but I also do really like the way they use the characters in this movie. SpongeBob and Patrick. I really made like the whole SpongeBob and Patrick thing. Like, I'll get into this a lot later, but one of my biggest problems is how much they like rip off other things in the SpongeBob series. So SpongeBob and Patrick's whole thing is just kind of like the first movie, but
the fact that they're going to find Gary, like we've seen.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think this movie does. There's not really anything wrong with like the characters stuff in this movie. At least not for any of the main characters.
At first,
and I'm just gonna say it. I do. Yeah, and I'm just gonna say it. Like, I do really like the whole Camp Coral like testimony scene. I mean, like, yeah, it does go on for a bit long, but honestly, I just really love. Like, I think because of like my emotional attachment to these characters, I just really love that. Like, they're all like that. It's just showing how much SpongeBob means to them. And, like, in a way, it's showing how much SpongeBob means to us, really, as the audience.
See,
I just wish it was done in a better way.
Yeah. Well, see, my thing is that I am emotionally attached to these characters, too. But I think because they're talking about SpongeBob in the context of, oh, we've always been friends ever since this thing that has never been established before. See, I know I've said that, like, okay, SpongeBob breaking continuity is not a big thing because, well, it was been doing that since the very beginning. Like, there's never been a continuity to break in SpongeBob. But I think now there kind of is, where you're just like, all of a sudden, okay, Sandy was there the whole time in this Camp Coral, and they're all the same age when they went to this camp, I guess, except Mr. Krabs. And SpongeBob was the one who told Mr. Krabs, you should start a restaurant. It's like, all right, I think this is a little too much, because I think we're going back and changing aspects that kind of go against what we already knew about the characters. And it's just weird. At least with the idea of this being a backdoor pilot for a show, it's like, okay, that makes kind of more sense to me, in that, okay, now we have this show where we can do whatever we want with these characters. So it's like, that makes sense. But the fact that you said, okay, this wasn't a backdoor pilot, it's like, okay, we're just breaking continuity because we had this weird idea where we're just like, hey, let's do a camp setting. It's like, all right, what's the point now? That's just kind of stupid. I think I should like that scene more, because I think the idea of these characters being emotionally resonant with SpongeBob and, coming to his defense should resonate with me on an emotional level, because I love these characters so much. But because it's within the context of something I'm not familiar with, I don't feel that emotion at all.
Yeah, that's fair. Another thing I do want to mention is that, like, you've obviously never seen the show Camp Coral, right? I can't imagine that you would.
Okay. I really don't have any interest in it.
Yeah. So I do want to say that, like, the Camp Coral location in the show is actually much different than the one in the movie. It's not like an exact, like, one-to-one thing, which is even weirder, honestly.
Sure, yeah.
But okay, so there's a couple differences. One of them is that Squidward is a camp counselor in the Camp Coral show and not one of the campers.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I guess that makes more sense, because Squidward
sense.
is implied to be a bit older than SpongeBob and Patrick.
Yeah.
Another thing is that in the movie, Camp Coral is spelled with 2 C's, but in the show, Camp Coral is spelled with a K, and it's actually run by Mr. Krabs.
Yeah.
Which honestly, I think honestly, like, as much as I don't really like the show that much, I think it's actually better that they did that because it just makes a bit more
Yeah,
sense.
these changes, I mean, I still don't like the idea of it, but these changes, if you're going to make a show that's based off of SpongeBob, those sound like changes that at least make sense.
Yeah, and the thing is that, like, the thing that really bothers me about the whole Camp Coral location that they flash back to in this movie is that it is like it just looks like such a like obnoxious, like kid friendly, like, oh, this is paradise, like nothing goes wrong here and blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
actually in the show, since Mr. Krabs is running it, it's actually a lot like more run down and there's like fewer places and everything and like things go wrong all the time.
It's like that
And that
episode.
to
It's like that episode where he opens a theme park and it's like Kittyland and it's all shitty and stuff like
yeah, I mean basically.
That's
And
great.
that to me is more in line with like the slightly cynical SpongeBob humor
Yeah.
than just like, oh, this place is like basically fucking Disney World.
Right. Yeah. That makes more sense to me. Again, as an outsider who has no skin in the game when it comes to Camp Coral.
But yeah, I guess this movie, oh my god, this movie has so much to talk about for me compared to the other ones, just because like there's more, I guess, more negatives, but also just in general, I feel like this movie does a lot more and like doesn't succeed
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
way. Okay, so the whole premise of this movie, just from the start, I think the premise is really not bad, but just like really uninspired
Mm-hmm.
because it's basically just a mix. I think you said this earlier. Basically, just a mix of the first movie and Have You Seen the Snail, the season 4 episode.
Yeah.
Um, which that to me is just we were talking about how like the first two movies they feel more like cinematic movies than a lot of other cartoon adaptations do.
Mm-hmm.
This honestly kind of shits on that, and it does actually kind of feel more like an extended episode minus the animation style, I guess.
Yeah, I think the animation
Because
style
they're
definitely tricks you into believing it's more cinematic than it actually is.
yeah, definitely because like and the thing with this is that like being unoriginal, whatever. Like the show has reused episode plots and like certain ideas over and over again. Like how many times has like going back to the Looney Tunes comparison, how many times have they made like the same formula? Like all of the Roadrunner shorts and all of the Pepe Le Pew shorts, they're basically the same thing, just with different gags.
Right, but going off
Um,
of what we said in the second movie, where you have a concept of SpongeBob and Plankton getting along similar to fun, but that movie's able to use that concept and make it its own thing and not just be
yeah,
derivative of what came before it, whereas
yeah.
this movie doesn't really do that.
This movie's not just derivative, but the thing is that it's not like they're ripping off some like random episodes that like no one cares about. They're ripping off like two of the most like beloved things in this entire series.
Mm-hmm.
Like Have You Seen the Snail is one of those episodes that even people who don't like post movie actually do really like or at least appreciate.
Yeah.
So it's just like they're just doing this mix of ideas that they already did like way better and probably will still probably be the best way that they did them before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nothing new is being achieved here.
Yeah. And I want to talk about Plankton in this movie because Plankton is just, the way they use Plankton is so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Because at first you think it's just another like, oh, he wants to steal the formula, and oh, like he gives Gary to this King Poseidon fellow, which I will talk about him. Um, but then it's like, but then he just like disappears from the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's no like follow through with it. It's just like, oh, SpongeBob and everyone else gets Gary. They escape the palace, and everyone is like Plankton just fucking like he just like fucks off like in the middle of the movie. He gives them the car to go to the lost city of Atlantic City, but I think after that he just dips out. Like it's just weird.
Yeah, it's definitely he definitely doesn't have the same presence that he had in the first movie, even if he's not the focus. And I mean, the second movie he's there a lot more, so you see him a lot more. But yeah, the first movie he's not in every scene, but you still feel his presence there. Whereas
Yeah.
here, yeah, he's just kind of whatever. Yeah, he's kind of an afterthought.
Another problem with the beginning of this movie to me is this is probably gonna sound like really nitpicky and bitchy, but like
Go on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is that like the plot of the movie doesn't really start until like 20 minutes in, which I mean that's fine. I feel like most movies' plots don't really start until that far in, because there's a lot of setup needed, you know. But the thing is that like the first 20 minutes of this movie is basically just an extra long SpongeBob episode where they're kind of trying to do like the whole, oh, we're like introducing these characters and stuff like that. That they kind of did in the second movie, but they did that in like a more creative way, I thought. But this one is just like the first 20 or so minutes is just kind of the characters like going through the motions and stuff like that. And again, I guess it was supposed to be like an introductory sort of thing. But the problem with that is like this is the third movie, and movie came out like what, like 20-ish years after the series first premiered. Like, who is going to see this movie and not know what's going on, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We've seen it before. Can we do something different now? And it's like, no. Or the thing they do differently is they have Keanu Reeves in a tumbleweed. Like,
oh boy, yeah, we need to talk about that. Keanu Reeves.
So Keanu's just in this movie randomly, which, okay, I'll be fair. The celebrities have shown up in SpongeBob movies before. The celebrities have shown up on SpongeBob the show before, because SpongeBob is kind of the biggest thing ever. So of course you're gonna have like celebrities be like, yeah, I want to be a part of that pie. It's like, sure. But I can't help but feel that he's only here because the internet was just obnoxious over Keanu Reeves in the late 2010s, and not because, we want to have him here because it'd be fun. It's like, no, we gotta appeal to the wholesome Reddit Chungus crowd. We gotta have Keanu here. It's like, ugh. And Keanu, I've gone over. I feel like I've mentioned this before. I'm not the biggest fan of Keanu as an actor. I like him. I like Keanu when he's good in movies, but he just was not bringing it for this one specifically.
Yeah.
This is one of those, oh, right, Keanu's not that great of an actor movies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I do, while we're on the subject of Keanu and his character in this movie, I just want to say that, like, the whole fucking, I guess, like, surreal dream sequence where they go to, like, this zombie pirate ghost bar is probably one, like, at least in the original trilogy of movies, probably the worst scene in the entire trilogy to me.
It's implemented about as well as the Camp Coral scenes in the movie too. Like, it is, but like, at least with Camp Coral, like, you're just like, it's just kind of there, whatever. Whereas like here, yeah, it takes up a good chunk of the movie.
Yeah,
I mean,
and here's
there's some
thing
good
with
jokes,
this movie,
but I can see, it is weirdly implemented.
And that leads me to like one of my other big problems with this movie, and it's that, like, you know, since this also kind of feels just more like an extended episode, there's like so much padding in this movie compared to the other ones.
Padding. Oh, look, a wall.
But like, the thing with the first and second movies is that, like, even if, like, you know, like, some scenes are better than others, obviously, but it still felt like a very consistent package. Like, there was never any point where I felt like, oh yeah, this is just the part of the movie where, like, they're just screeching it to a halt because something else needs to happen and they need to fill the time. I never felt that watching the first two movies. But with this one, it really feels like they needed to pad time.
Yeah.
And so they just had this weird dream sequence that ultimately amounts to nothing. I mean, I guess it pushes the Keanu Reeves tumbleweed into the real world.
Yeah.
But like, nothing was really accomplished from it. It was just there.
Yeah. And it's not even like funny absurdism. It just feels like they were just plucking concepts that they were just like, yeah, let's just put this in the movie. Zombie Western pirates, and it's okay. Oh, look, Snoop Dogg and Danny Trejo show up. It's like, oh, cool.
I will admit, I howl laughter every time I watch this movie when Snoop Dogg shows up. Because it's just, it's not even like with the movie, but more like at the movie, because it's just so stupid.
And just hearing Snoop Dogg be like, hey, SpongeBob, it's me, Snoop Dogg. It's like, He probably wasn't
Also,
even hired to be on the movie. He just showed up one day and they're like, "Hey, let's put Snoop Dogg in the movie."
and I think Danny Trejo's character could have been funny.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I like Danny Trejo.
Yeah, I haven't really seen anything that he's in. The only thing I know about him is that he's in that one like Regal advertisement that plays before the movies.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I think I've heard I don't know if I'm not familiar with the Regal ads because where's the closest Regal to me? I can't remember, but I know I'm more familiar with the AMC ad. But
yeah,
no,
it's basically it's kind of like the AMC ad,
yeah,
the fucking stupid ass Nicole Kidman one, except there's like a bunch of celebrities in this one.
Oh god, that sounds even more obnoxious. I mean, just advertising theaters while you're at the theater is so stupid to me, but whatever. Rant for another day. Danny Trejo. I like Danny Trejo. Spy Kids, Heat. Okay, just those two, but like, he can be fun. But he's just wasted in this movie. It's just like, oh, he showed up because he's Danny Trejo. He's an actor I recognize, so he's just a celebrity.
I will admit, I do like the joke where they like defeat him just because they're looking at the curtains.
Sure, yeah, and then they never realize it. They're just like, oh, I guess he's defeated now. It's like, okay, that's funny. Could have been funnier, but for what it is, it's fine.
Oh my god. Okay, I guess while we're on the subject of celebrities, we should talk about someone else who's in this movie. Awkwafina.
Yeah. You know what? I'll give the movie this. Awkwafina is not a reason I hate it, which is huge because sometimes when Awkwafina shows up in a movie, I cringe into the next century.
Yeah, I've never liked her at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is probably like a really cynical thing to say, but like, does anyone really like actually does she have any genuine like fans? Genuinely,
I mean,
she just feels like a plant that was like just like put there by the studios.
I don't not disagree with that. I would not be surprised if we found out she was a plant because she kind of just shows up. She kind of just showed up in the popular culture. You're just like, who are you?
Yeah.
It's like, no, she's a rapper. It's like, oh, great. I've never heard her music. And every time I've seen her show up in a movie, kids movies mostly, and comedies, she's been cringe. I hear she's really good.
Mermaid 2023.
Oh god.
Kung Fu Panda 4.
Oh god. Yeah, the worst of the worst. I will say, I've heard she's really good in The Farewell. That is the one movie people swear by her being really, really good in. I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure I'll see it someday, but that is the one that people swear by. They're just like, no, it is really good. It's like how people swore by Punch Drunk Love with Adam Sandler. It's like they swear by it. It's like, okay. So someday I'll see it.
Like obviously those examples that I mentioned are far, far worse than this movie.
Yes. Yeah.
She's not like super annoying in the movie, mainly because she just voices a character that's not really in it for much anyway.
But she's also not funny in the movie. Yeah, she's not funny. Yeah, like every time she's just like, "You're fired." It's like, is that a joke? Like, it's not funny. She's not funny in the movie. There are worse examples of her for me personally. It's just like, she's just kind of here. She just doesn't fix anything. She just kind of
I don't know why they keep trying to put her in stuff. Say what you want about like the oversaturation of like Jack Black right now. Mm-hmm. At least he's like a talented actor.
Oh yeah. Just people like Jack Black or Chris Pratt. It's like, it's annoying when they show up in everything, but there are examples of them working in movies where it's like, okay, I can tolerate you. Even if I don't like the movie. It's just like, it's not necessarily your fault. And it's not Awkwafina's fault when those movies are bad that she's in. It's just, I can't think of a movie where I'm just blown away by her being included in it.
Yeah. Wasn't she? I could have sworn she was in like an Illumination movie as well. She had to be. Was it like Sing 2 or something?
Migration was her Illumination movie. Because she was Migration. She was that annoying pigeon. In that movie. I guess that's the one Illumination movie she was in that I can think of off the top of my head.
For some reason, I thought she was one of the fucking furries in Sing 2, but that was probably
you know what?
Else.
She's probably going to be in Sing 3. Who are we kidding? It's inevitable that she's going to be in Sing 3. I'm calling it right now until I'm wrong, and then years later Sing 3 comes out and people are like, "Hal, you were wrong. She wasn't in Sing 3." It's like, look, I'm just predicting, okay? I don't know for sure.
That actually mentioning illumination brings me to a really poetic way to describe this movie for me, and I think it's like the best description of this movie. It honestly, at times, it feels like a SpongeBob movie that's like stuck in an Illumination movie. I think is the best way to describe this movie.
I can see that. Yeah, because it definitely feels the most corporate kids movie out of all of them. Even though the second movie felt that at times, it still felt fun. Like it still worked. Whereas
it still
here,
felt like a SpongeBob movie.
Yeah. Whereas here, I can see that it is SpongeBob trapped in an Illumination movie.
It feels like they really wanted to make like a genuine SpongeBob movie, but they just kept being bombarded with mandates and like, oh, you gotta have this celebrity in and stuff like that.
We're definitely in this. I mean, this was 2020. I want to say like the late 2010s and into now early 2020s are just some of the worst era for studio interference. It is obnoxious. The way that movies will just be ruined because of how samey and formulaic they feel.
Yeah. And I also want to talk about the King Poseidon character, because
also played by Matt Berry.
This is which is honestly kind of funny. That he agreed to be in 2 SpongeBob movies in a row
as 2 different characters. Yeah, and look, I like him as a voice actor. He works. He's a good voice actor. I don't think he sells this character all that well, but I mean, he's not the main reason I don't like this movie.
Yeah.
But he just doesn't
the
thing
with King Poseidon is that he just, going back to like ripping off the first movie, he just feels like a diet version of the movie Neptune from the first movie.
Yeah.
Because he has basically the same character.
Yeah, he's obsessed with looking cool. He's obsessed with his looks. Yeah. Whereas
he's like really wimpy and stuff.
Yeah, but it's not as funny. I feel like Jeffrey Tambor as the first Neptune was just so much funnier.
Yeah. And then there's that whole scene, like I think my second least favorite scene in the movie has to be that whole scene at the end where Neptune's like, "Oh, don't you like me? Don't you, Chancellor?" And like everyone's just like, "No, we don't like you." And then he's all like, "Wah, I don't have any friends." And it's just like, am I watching SpongeBob or Dora the fucking Explorer right now? Like,
yeah, because
okay, like SpongeBob, I acknowledge that it is primarily a show for children. It's gonna have sappy moments here and there. Like, I get that.
Right, it's meant for kids, but not babies. There's a difference.
Yeah, but this felt particularly like it felt like a toddler show. That whole scene.
Yeah. The main villain's crying because he doesn't have any friends.
Yeah.
That is very much a toddler movie thing. Yeah. You'd see that in like Paw Patrol. I'm saying that as someone who has never watched an episode of Paw Patrol in their life, because why the fuck would I?
I remember just, I don't know why we did this, but randomly me and a few friends of mine just decided to watch the Paw Patrol movie on voice chat one day, and I don't remember anything from it. I don't know why we did that.
The one thing I think about when I hear Paw Patrol movie is when people demanded that James review it, because they're just like, oh, it's animation, and James likes animated movies, and James had an existential crisis where he was like, what the fuck am I doing with my life if people are asking me to review the Paw Patrol movie?
Yeah, I've heard that like his fans aren't, well, at least like some of his fans aren't the best mentally.
I mean, hey, I know plenty of high functioning members of society who are fans of Shea Frillis. It's just that we don't talk about the subreddit because that's where all the suckling off the teat of society people are. I'll say that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, where are we going with that? Oh yeah, no, Sponge on the Run. Yeah, that scene fucking, it was fucking embarrassing. Just I don't have any friends.
Like, you're a fucking king. Why would you need to have friends anyway?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It is literally just an excuse for SpongeBob to be like, well, I'll be your friend because he's positive and stuff. It's like, yeah, okay, great.
Okay, I will say there's this one scene I really like in this movie, and I'm kind of upset that it's in this movie because I think it's a really good scene. It's scene near the middle of the movie where, like, obviously SpongeBob's been gone for, like, a while, and Mr. Krabs is just kind of sulking in the Krusty Krab, and Plankton comes in, and Mr. Krabs, he asks for the secret formula, and Mr. Krabs just gives it to him, and he's like, "What? You're not gonna like fight me? Like you're just gonna give it to me?" And he's like actually like disappointed that like he got it for once. I actually thought that was a really good scene.
See, in a vacuum, that sounds amazing because again, I am emotionally connected to these characters, so I want to see something like that. But yeah, in this movie, I really just don't feel for it at all, and it's such a fucking shame.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess going back to the whole thing of this this movie feeling more like an Illumination movie. The soundtrack of this movie is kind of obnoxious, honestly.
Yeah. Like this is the movie where it really started it uses like pre-established songs and it felt weird for me.
Yeah,
because
like it felt weird to hear SpongeBob and Patrick sing "Live the Vida Loca."
Livin' La Vida Loca, that was weird. There's that scene when they first introduce Otto in the car, and they're playing that famous rock song. I forget what it's called. Soul Rider, I think it was. But they just played the beginning, and it just felt out of place in the movie. It's like, why wouldn't you just make a song for that? Because you're not going to use the whole song, so why are you even using it? And then there's that scene then it's the very end when they're just playing Take On Me, which I mean, it could work if you, I don't know, tweaked it a little and made it sound like it was in, because it is a cover. It's like, okay, you're using a cover. That's different. If you're gonna use just the songs, that's weird. If you're gonna cover the songs, like when they did a parody in the when they used the Goofy Goober song in the first movie, that was a parody that worked. So it's like, okay, do like a cover or something different. But even still, they don't make it work because the Take On Me cover just kind of feels out of place during the end.
I don't know what it is with Take On Me and being used so improperly in animated movies.
Which is such a shame.
This and the Mario movie.
Yeah, which is such a shame because Take On Me is a genuinely great song. And yeah, it's being ruined by being shoved into fucking kids' movies. Ugh.
And then there's, interestingly, one of the songs in the credits is actually like a jazz cover of the Gary Come Home song from that episode.
Oh, that's cool.
Which in a way kind of makes my point about them ripping off that episode even worse, because like, okay, it exists, why are you just doing it again but worse?
Yeah.
There's also, I mean, the second movie has this too, but the third movie credit song has this like really obnoxious like hip-hop song that you would probably hear on the radio and just forget about in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
The second movie kind of had that too, but at least I get that one sounded like a little more tropical. Like it felt more SpongeBob-ish. But this one just feels generic.
Yeah.
Now the first movie's credits using Ocean Man, that's really good.
That's fucking peak as fuck, dude.
But yeah, that like pretty much corroborates my entire point of this feeling like a SpongeBob movie stuck in an Illumination movie, because like there's so much corporate bullshit. And that's sad to say because like, I mean, I guess when we talk, I think this applies more to the Sandy movie. I'll get into more to that when we talk about that. But what I love most about SpongeBob is that it doesn't really, despite it being such a huge thing, it doesn't usually conform to like excessively mainstream corporate bullshit. Like it's just kind of its own thing, its own like timeless thing.
Yeah, even though it's one of the biggest things in the world, it is very much felt like it's doing its own thing. It's not chasing trends. SpongeBob was, even though people didn't like a lot of the episode output during the late 2000s and the early 2010s, it wasn't because it was chasing trends. It was just experimenting, and the experiments weren't working for a lot of people. Like, I feel like looking back, that is something to admire about the show. Whereas now, I think we're in a way worse situation than we were back then. We didn't know what we had.
I think even in the show now, like it still does feel like authentic. It's
Mhm.
just like these fucking movies
Yeah.
that are weird.
Sure, that's fair.
Yeah, and also I do want to say, since we talked about like how the first movie and the second movie had the actual SpongeBob show crew work on the movie, this time they didn't actually do that. I'm guessing because they didn't want another long hiatus from working on the show's episodes. So instead, they did get some like former SpongeBob people. Like the head of story of this movie apparently is Aaron Springer, who's
Mm.
honestly one of my favorite cartoonists like of all time. I love Aaron Springer, but and we should also mention the director of this movie,
Ah, yeah. Well, we haven't been talking
Mr.
about the directors because the first one was Steven Hillenburg himself, and then the second one was Mike Mitchell. I want to mention Mike Mitchell for the second movie because he not only directed Kung Fu Panda 4, but Surviving Christmas, the Tony Soprano Christmas movie I've talked about on the podcast.
Well, the Mike Mitchell directed the live action
Sure,
segments in
yeah,
Spud Out of
co-director.
Water.
Yeah, so
Yeah, the actual movie was directed by Paul Tibbett, who was the showrunner at the time.
Yeah, Paul Tibbett, who is familiar with SpongeBob, so it's like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then
Now
this director,
Tim Hill, Mr. Max Keeble's Big Move guy.
dude, Tim Hill, director of Max Keeble's Big Move, the greatest movie ever made. But he also directed Muppets from Space, the other greatest movie ever made.
Yeah.
But then he also directed Hop, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and Sponge on the Run.
Yeah. So Tim Hill is a fascinating character because the thing is that like this kind of ties into like my whole theory of this movie just being the victim of major studio interference.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that Tim Hill was actually one of the original, I guess, like developers of SpongeBob SquarePants as a series.
Right.
Because he was one of the original writers for the pilot episode, Help Wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked on the show on and off in season 1. And then after that, he just kind of dipped. And I think he made Max Keeble's Big Move after that. I think.
Well,
yeah,
because 99 was when SpongeBob premiered. That's the same year that Muppets from Space premiered, and then 2001 was when Max Keeble's Big Move happened.
Yeah, that must have been the first thing he did after he left SpongeBob.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can only go up, because
yeah,
everybody knows Max Keeble's Big Move is the greatest movie ever made.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But so we came back for this movie, and like I feel like it should have been a slam dunk because like even though obviously he directed like Illumination's Hop and like the 2007 Alvin and the Chipmunks and stuff like that, I feel like this should have been a slam dunk because he knows a lot about SpongeBob and he knows about especially about what Hillenburg would want.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they tried to do that, but like the fucking bullshit. Like put in pop songs and put in these celebrities just kept getting in the way of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of hard to tell, was this entirely his fault or was this studio mandated bullshit? Which I mean, you can never really know those things unless people actually talk about it. But also, it's like film is a collaborative effort. You can't really blame one person. Sometimes a fuck up is just the fact that a lot of people are working on it and you can't really have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, basically. So I'm trying to think. I'm sure there was some other stuff that I wanted to say about this movie. Nope. I can't really think of anything else. Those are all my major criticisms about it. I guess I should say some positive things about it. Again, I do like the characters. I think they're all in character. There's nothing necessarily wrong with them. And obviously, I like the animation style.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the jokes are pretty good.
I laughed.
Yeah, I do like the emotional scenes with the characters, even if it is involving Camp Coral, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's more of a problem for me, where I don't really care for spin-offs of SpongeBob. Like, SpongeBob is the thing I grew up watching, so that's the thing I want. Whereas I don't really see a value in spin-offs. So, and
I get that.
And also just the fact that this, and even if it wasn't intended to be a backdoor pilot for a spin-off, just the inclusion of Camp Coral from a storytelling perspective is just so messy that it doesn't work. It doesn't work for me narratively. I just find it obnoxious.
I guess, like, not to really bring down the mood too much, but I guess we should talk about the fact that, unfortunately, during this movie's production, Steven Hillenburg, of course, passed away.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and the
sometimes
movie was
forget.
dedicated to
I
him.
sometimes forget that he died in 2018, and then I remember it. I'm like, "Fuck, dude, it's sad. It
Yeah.
really is sad."
The thing is that, like, he still did, like, I guess, work on this movie, but more as, like, an executive producer role, kind
Yeah,
of like he did.
yeah,
And he, like, I guess, helped with the story a little bit, like he did with Sponge Out of Water, but,
right, but like not enough for him to be credited as working on the story.
yeah.
But yeah, and so then the whole in memory of Steven Hillenburg at the end. I mean, it makes sense because this was the first movie, the first SpongeBob movie to come out post him dying.
Yeah.
So of course they're gonna be
Yeah.
like for Steven. It's like okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this one guy, I don't know if you noticed, but there was this one guy who made, like, a video about, reviewing all the SpongeBob movies, and, he went on, like, this huge, like, pretentious tirade about how them putting that at the end of the movie was just, like, this huge disgrace and, like, an insult to, and okay, I'm like, "Okay, come on." Like,
Is are you talking about the clip of the guy going, "No, no, you can't do that"?
No, you don't get to. You don't get to do that.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
So
that's
people
what
were
it is.
quoting that after I reviewed the movie, and I'm like, "What is this?" I don't know, and I had to look it up. I had to look it up, so I typed in, "No, no, you can't do this," and I found a clip of it on YouTube where it was like, yeah, it shows up for Steven Hillenburg, and this voice just goes, "No, no, you can't do that. No, no." And I'm like,
It's
yeah, who was the YouTuber
yeah,
who did that?
I think his name was 24 Frames of Nick or something
Oh,
like that.
that was 24 Frames of Nick. Oh, that's hilarious. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so funny.
Yeah. And like, people were giving him shit for that, which, I mean, like, I guess at the end of the day, I guess it's not that serious. I don't know if it's
No.
really deserved, quote unquote, but
Yeah.
like, it's still just funny that happened.
Oh yeah, it's a funny meme just to be like, no, no, you can't do that. Like I'm gonna be quoting that for a while now, but yeah, no, that is who cares? Like that is a
Yeah.
dumb thing to complain about the movie. It's like, well, one, apparently Hillenburg did have a say in some of the things that happened in this movie. Like he was a part of the production, even if it was very, very early on. But also, he is the creator, and it is the first movie to come out after his death. And it's like, whatever. Like saying,
Yeah, like, why wouldn't they?
yeah, for Steven Hillenburg, it is, it is so inoffensive and minuscule. It's whatever. To go on a rant about that, it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
And also,
It's just like,
SpongeBob is this huge thing now. It has been this huge thing for years. It's like he never had a say in everything that goes into SpongeBob. He has a say in a lot that had to go into it. And so, yeah, this movie does not insult me, and I don't think it insults the memory of Steven Hillenburg. It's just another bad SpongeBob product, which there's been plenty of that long before this movie.
It just really does. Like, I don't want to go off on a tangent and complain too much about other people complaining, because I think that's just useless and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But I just find it so weird how people treat Steven Hillenburg as just this Walt Disney type god who must be like fucking worshipped at all, at all costs.
Yeah,
when it's just like it's just like he never really, like, he's gone on record saying that he never really wanted to be seen as just the creator of SpongeBob.
I
he just wanted to live his life.
I did some light research on the whole idea of people claiming he never wanted spin-offs, or he was like ashamed of like where SpongeBob went or something like that. And yeah, I think people claiming that the modern stuff kind of shitting all over his grave is a little, it's very, not that I don't get where it's coming from, but it is very outlandish for people to say that. I think it's strange. And I haven't seen any, I did research and I have not seen any claims saying that, no, he would not have approved this. It's like, one, I don't think he'd care. And two, there's not enough evidence showing that he really had any say on this. I'll say this, the fact that they didn't do spin-offs for SpongeBob only after the fact he died is a little sussy. That's a little, I think that's more so bad timing. So I can see it being really insulting, but look,
it's just Nickelodeon being stupid. And
if Hillenburg
really
was
bad.
still alive and they were doing these spin-offs, I would still not like them because I don't like the idea of spin-offs for SpongeBob, regardless if the creator died or not. Like I don't care what the creator has to say about these movies and shows. I have my own opinions. I think this movie sucks, regardless of what Hillenburg would have thought of it. I think it sucks.
Yeah. But honestly, just in general, I'm not someone who like watches a bunch of video essays because I don't really like the whole like overly like pretentious, cynical review culture of like a lot of channels have. But that's just my opinion. I mean, people can make whatever they want, however they want.
Yeah,
but that's
of course.
That's just my personal taste.
I'm fine with people making 7-hour-long video essays on movies or whatever. I may not necessarily watch them, but, just don't be a pretentious dick about it, I still like Nostalgia Critic videos from back in the day. Yeah, is he overly negative in those? Yes, but they're funny. They're funny videos. And sometimes
it's kind of how I feel. That's kind of how I feel about Adam from YMS. Like I still like watching his channel. It's just that sometimes he has takes that I really, really, really disagree with. But it's whatever.
Well, see,
I still like watching him.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. I was never like annoyed with Adam. Like, has he said things I highly disagree with? Yeah, of course, obviously. Like every reviewer, there are takes that James has. I work for the guy. I'm his personal slave for the rest of my life. But there are things he said where I'm just like, I really disagree with that. I think that's stupid. But I'm not just going to be like, oh, James, I'm no longer editing for you. He'd just be like, okay, bye. Like, he wouldn't care. But also, it's like, I don't really care. Yeah, and the same thing with Adam. Yeah, is it annoying when he says something I disagree with? Sure. But I'm not that annoyed because it's like, okay, he explains it well. He goes into depth. He explains things perfectly fine where it can be like, okay, this is just a matter of difference of opinion. It's like, if you think that way, whatever, fine.
I'm sorry, just the thought of like you going up to him and saying, I don't want to edit for you anymore, and him just saying, okay, bye, it's really funny.
He'd be just like, see ya, whatever. He pulls a lever, I fall in a trap door down. It's like Homer and Mr. Burns. I just fall down a trap door. Yeah. No, that is funny. But yeah.
Speaking of Adam, I saw that he rated the first movie a 6 out of 10.
Yeah. So clearly he hated it, of course. It's
like, exactly.
Look, I don't even care. Like, Adam rated all the Star Wars movies half a stars. It's like, okay, I can't get mad at that. That's just funny that he rated all the Star Wars.
I remember that. I think it was because he was on a stream and he was just like going on this drunken rant about how like Star Wars and Marvel and like the DC universe are just the worst things ever.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, even though Star Wars is my second favorite movie of all time, I love it to death. I will defend the fuck out of it. Him rating it a half a star is funny to me because that is so absurd. That is such an absurdly low rating to give a movie. It's funny. I don't care that he rated it that. It's like if people are going to make outlandish reviews for things, it's like, yeah, it's annoying, but yeah, like you, I'm just not gonna let it bother me. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So if 24 Frames of Nick did a video on Sponge on the Run and he went on a rant for Steven Hillenburg, that's just cringe to me. Yeah, that's cringy, but it's funny. I'll say that.
Yeah.
No.
At least you got a good meme out of it.
No, you can't do that or whatever. Yeah, it's great.
That's really the best thing you could do is just like joke about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But
yeah, I guess if I had to give a rating to this movie out of 10, it would probably be around a 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm definitely lower. I'm a 4. I think there's aspects to it I really like, but it's not a good product overall for me. So that's a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, and I'll also before we move on, I do want to say that looking at the Blu-ray right now, this is the only movie that does not have a quote on it. So on the Blu-ray, so that's really funny.
Suspicious. There's no positive quote on the Blu-ray. How about that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not keeping this Blu-ray. I'm getting rid of it. So, unfortunately, that means my 3-movie collection slipcover is now worthless. So I'm getting rid of that as well. So,
That's fair.
I'm just keeping the first two. I like those movies. I'll keep them for the collection, but yeah, unfortunately, I will not be keeping Sponge on the Run or this slipcover. Also, this slipcover annoys me because it just has Sponge on the Run advertised on the slipcover itself. Like, it says 3-movie collection and says it has the SpongeBob Movie, Sponge Out of Water, and Sponge on the Run, but the artwork they use for the cover is just the Sponge on the Run artwork, and that annoys me.
I think I noticed that. Yeah, it's just weird.
All right.
So yeah,
I
guess we should
talk a little bit about Sandy?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's just get this out of the way.
I think we have the same thing to say about this movie. It sucks. It is easily the worst. It is so bad, it makes Sponge on the Run seem like the first movie. It is... Holy shit, this movie's bad.
Even as like a SpongeBob defender who likes like most of the seasons generally, I would say, I guess if I had to make an estimate, I would say in terms of the show, I would say I like around 70% of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But this is one that I just cannot defend because it is just, and I talked a little bit about this about Sponge on the Run, but I think it's doubly true here in that like this is the antithesis to like everything good about SpongeBob ever. This is like this genuinely is like Illumination tier, maybe even like lower than that, maybe on like the bad side of Illumination, like the really bad side.
This is a Netflix exclusive for a reason. It is a Netflix exclusive animated film. So this is where so it's 3D animated, obviously, but unlike the 3D animation we've gotten before where it works for each movie, this is horribly, horribly ugly 3D animation. It is so bad.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, the animation of this movie is just so weird.
It's ugly.
Because it's just, it doesn't feel high quality at all.
No. It feels Netflix exclusive, in fact.
Yeah. And, obviously this is another movie where they have, live action segments of they have live action segments and stuff like that.
And the live action segments are also ugly.
Yeah. And can I just say this? Can we have a SpongeBob movie that does not fucking incorporate live action? Please? Can we just have a SpongeBob movie that exists as a SpongeBob movie in its own universe and we don't have to go up to the fucking surface? Because it always seems like that's the thing that they try to go for, they're out of water this time. We just fucking saw them out of water 3 times already.
Yeah, and you know what? They go out of water in the show too. So I feel like they want to heighten the tension. So it's they're leaving the ocean. Isn't that cool? It's well, they've left the ocean several times in the show. So no. And like you said, we've had 3 movies where they've done that. So can we do something else?
I mean, I guess in Sponge on the Run, it does still mostly take place in Bikini Bottom, but that fucking stupid scene takes up so much a good chunk of the movie that it's just
exactly. And then
it feels like they want they feel the need to have all of these live action cameos and stuff like that to make it this is a movie, so we need to have this stuff. But really, you don't.
No,
you really don't.
You can have voice actors, or you can have celebrities make voice appearances. I mean, they do that because they have Craig Robinson and Johnny Knoxville as Sandy's family members. But then, they feel the need to shove in Wanda Sykes as the main villain. Oh, Wanda Sykes. Oh, it hurts so much. Oh, she is abysmal in this movie.
Oh my god! Every actor is fucking abysmal.
All the acting is bad. They're the fucking 2 cowboy assistants. Those fucking actors they're horrible. They're not funny.
Yeah,
they're clearly comedy actors. They're not funny. Wanda Sykes is a very famous comedian who has been funny in other movies. She's not funny here. She's disturbing in this movie, in fact. The only thing I can think of with Wanda Sykes is that she plays that
cow in Barnyard. That's the only thing I know her from.
Oh yeah, she was in Over the Hedge. She was the skunk in Over the Hedge. I can't think of anything else she was in that's significant, but she's been in stuff.
The only thing I know is that she plays this like the sassy
Yeah.
black scent cow in Barnyard.
Oh yeah. I remember Barnyard and Back at the Barnyard, greatest show ever made. But yeah, no, she was horrible in this because her as a character in this movie is bizarre, and not the good kind of bizarre, the bad kind of bizarre, because she's just like, I just want to cuddle with fish, I want to sleep with them. It's like, whoa whoa
already.
Yeah. Oh, and then the fucking, I mean, we're skipping ahead, but again, I don't really have that much to say about this movie other than it is fucking dog shit. When she gets defeated and her head gets in the fish and she fucking orgasms being like, I'm a fish. It's like, what the fuck? I thought this was a kid's movie.
That's another thing about this movie. It like something about it just feels disgusting.
It is disgusting.
And I can't really describe why.
Yeah, it's just it's disgusting because of the fucking wouldn't be furry. It'd be no. Would it be scaly? What is the thing you want to fuck a fish? That's what Wanda Sykes is in this movie. She wants to fuck the fish. Whatever. Yeah, that's disgusting.
Yeah,
but also
and there's also scenes where there's also the scene where the fucking snakes bite Sandy and there's just inflation.
Yeah. She's just like, oh, Sandy's fat now. It's like,
and then SpongeBob. There's both a scene where SpongeBob sniffs a bunch of shit.
Oh yeah.
And there's also a scene where he tickles people's feet in the pool.
Foot fetish stuff. Even the scene when he's multiplying felt very kind of disturbing in that kind of sense, where he's just he's multiplying and he's just and there's just a million of them. It felt very weird.
Yeah, but it just feels. I mean, there's kind of a debate over whether is this stuff just it's just intended to be normal cartoon gag and stuff like that. Most of the time it's just that.
Yeah, but sometimes you come across a cartoon that crosses a line and you're just like, okay, this, you can't be putting this in a kid's cartoon.
Yeah, it just does not feel right.
Yeah.
It just feels weird.
You feel disgusting watching it, and nothing necessarily inappropriate is happening on screen, but there's just a feeling where you're like, ugh. You just feel disgusted.
That's pretty much what this movie is.
Yeah, but also I would also argue it's disgusting from the perspective of they have the fucking gall to be all meta, being like, oh, the villain's plan is to market SpongeBob and all of the characters as marketable plushies or whatever. It's just movie, you have no right to criticize yourself. Because
you know what's funny is that SpongeBob has already done a much better version of that exact thing. There was an episode in season 5 called The Krusty Sponge.
I remember that episode.
Yeah, the whole plot was basically this food critic comes into the Krusty Krab and he thinks SpongeBob is the key to what makes the Krusty Krab really good. And so Mr. Krabs just starts marketing the hell out of it, but everything in the restaurant becomes SpongeBob. Yeah, basically.
I remember that. Yeah. Whereas here it feels way too on the nose, and also the fact that it's in a movie that's exclusively on Netflix. It's you don't get to fucking criticize yourself. You don't get to fucking wag your finger being like, it's no. You are the opposite. You're in the opposite camp to be talking about this shit. Sit the fuck down, Sandy Cheeks movie.
Can we also talk about that one rather infamous scene where Wanda Sykes' head is just pasted onto a little girl's body?
It's horrible looking. It is.
Yeah.
This movie is 20 years. It came out 20 years after the first movie, and the effects look worse than the first movie. They are objectively worse. It is an ugly looking movie.
I think the thing is, and I say I think with absolute sincerity, think they were trying to do something similar to how, like, you know how, like, the Patchy the Pirate segments are, like, intentionally cheap looking and, like, the effects are really bad, but it's like a joke. It's like
Right.
tongue in cheek.
But
This
they
one,
never
it just
looked this
it doesn't come
bad.
across that way.
Yeah. No, they never looked this bad. The Patchy the Pirate stuff also has the excuse of, well, it was on a TV budget. And yeah, it did look bad on purpose, but it wasn't obnoxious about that. It wasn't obnoxious about the fact.
Yeah.
It still felt in earnest. Whereas, yeah, this stuff, and this is also on a movie budget. Like, this should not be.
Yeah.
It should not be looking this
Yeah.
horrible.
Also, can we talk about the new additions to this movie? Those being Sandy's family and also that, like, one fucking mechanical horse that she just has.
Yeah, she just has a mechanical horse for some reason. It's like,
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think there really is much to talk about because, like,
No.
they're not really interesting.
Yeah, well, again, they're not interesting. Absolutely. But also, it's like, again, like we've been saying, there is no SpongeBob continuity. So the fact that there's just this family and a horse shows up, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's not fun, like, when you change continuity like that, where you're just like, oh, this is this now. It's like, okay, is it funny? No. So it was completely pointless. Yeah, no, this is yeah, like we've been saying, it's a bad movie.
One thing I also want to say about this movie is that the people behind it is actually like not really made up of SpongeBob crew members. There was only one person that I can see in, like, the main credits that worked on this movie, and that's Kaz. So he was, like, one of the writers for the show in season 3, and he, like, came back in recent years. So he wrote some stuff for this movie. I don't know what, but, like, but it seems, looking at the names, most of the people who worked on this movie are people who have literally not just not done anything SpongeBob before, but haven't really done, like, anything animated or, like, comedic before. So it's just like, why did they get to direct this movie then? Was it just like were they just, like, paid to do it? Like,
did they know a guy?
Yeah, like, it's just weird to me. So yeah, the director of this film, Liza Johnson, has literally never done, like, she's basically only worked on, like, prestigious drama series. Like, what? What kind of fucking... I guarantee you that the only reason she was picked to direct this movie is because she asked for, like, maybe the lowest salary out of anyone. I don't know. I don't really know how that works, but it's just like, why this? Why can't you at least get someone that's, like, good with animated movies? Like, Jesus.
Yeah, somebody who's directed animation before and has a background in animation. Whoa, what a novel concept! An animation movie being directed by somebody who is familiar with animation.
Yeah, it's just, like, so stupid.
Yeah.
This movie, I don't know if I would say this movie is the absolute worst thing to come out of the series, but it is, like, probably the most frustrating one, like the one that, like, feels the least like SpongeBob.
Yeah, I mean, this is the worst thing I've seen. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I get, well, maybe specific episodes might be worse. I don't know. It's been years since
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's
like,
been...
there are probably specific episodes that I find worse than this, but
yeah,
just, like, what does represent is so much worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Out of the movies, this is easily the worst. Like, it is awful. It's so bad. It's so bad that it makes me want to make jokes about that Sandy image.
I noticed that, like, you know, I'm not a patron on Letterboxd, so I don't, like, have this feature. But, like, one of the things you when you reviewed this movie, you had, like, one of those, like, custom posters that people make.
Oh, dude,
and it was just that.
Yeah, so Letterboxd patron, I know it's really fucking cringe of me to pay $50 a year to use Letterboxd, but I mean, I do use Letterboxd a ton, so it makes sense. And also, the posters are just, it's so much fun to change posters and backdrops.
Yeah,
it also involves the main thing I use Patreon for is so I don't have to see the fucking shitty ads on Letterboxd. The ads made Letterboxd unusable. It's so bad. But anyway, yes, the one of the posters, and I'm glad Letterboxd hasn't taken it down yet, is of the infamous Sandy Cheeks image.
Yeah, it's really funny.
For those of you who don't know what the infamous Sandy Cheeks image is, all right, not safe for work warning. There's your warning. It's an, you know what? It's a not safe for work image. It is an image. It's a pornographic image of giant Sandy Cheeks with a huge dick, and she's vacuuming up like a bunch of cars with her huge dick. I don't know how anybody in the world could find that like hot and get horny over that image. I really can't imagine it, but it's out there. It's a fucking absurd image, but yeah, all you have to do is just crop out her face and you know exactly the image it's from. That's how infamous of an image it is.
Yeah.
If I could come up with a positive connection with this movie, with jokes I made of it, in my first review, I said I felt more emotion listening to a certain song than I did watching the movie. There's this channel called Boy What that William and all our friends discovered one night, where it's this guy makes these songs and then he AIs the voices of the characters from SpongeBob into the songs. So I know I say AI and all of a sudden I'm, red alarm bells are going off in people's heads. It's like, hold on. Is it weird that he's using AI? Yes. But he makes the songs himself. He actually does all like the music production like himself. He actually sings and does all of that. But then later on, he AIs the voices over that. So it's like, okay, he's using AI as a tool, not as the actual replacement of the thing.
Yeah.
And some of those songs are bangers. Like, I'm dead fucking serious. This song, Dear Magic Conch Shell. It is so good. I listen to it all the time.
I might have to check those out.
Dude, it is actually a banger. It's weird for me to say that, but it is a banger. I listen to it constantly. I love that song so much. Dear Magic Conch Shell. It's really good.
Dear Magic Conch Shell, what can I do to erase all the heartache?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out at some point because I'd never heard of that.
Yeah,
I've heard of people making like AI covers of existing songs with SpongeBob characters, but
oh yeah, that's a thing too. But yeah, so anyway, listen to Dear Magic Conch Shell and don't watch the Sandy Cheeks movie.
Just this movie just frustrates me to no end because I was gonna go off on a tangent about this with Sponge on the Run, but I think this applies more here. And that is that, again, like, I think this movie is just the antithesis of what SpongeBob is. Like, because SpongeBob, the thing with SpongeBob is that, like, regardless of what you think of, like, the episodes, whether you like a lot of them or you only like some of them, whatever. The thing with SpongeBob is that it's always been a fantastic show for its target audience. It's never just content with just being like, oh, okay, let's give kids like this lowbrow, stupid slop and let's have them eat it up. No, it's always been a great show for kids. They have like great characters, great humor, and like great visuals that kids can latch onto. And it's not a show that's content with just talking down to them. But this movie genuinely feels like they just fucking betrayed that.
Yeah.
And like all of that. It literally just feels like lowbrow, like ADHD slop.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's horrible. I'm not adding it to the collection. I mean, I can't because it's Netflix exclusive, so thank God.
Yeah.
But
thank God it's a streaming movie, because then I wouldn't have to add it to my collection.
Yeah. So you know what? Before we wrap up, to add a positive spin to this, because we were planning this SpongeBob episode, I've gone back and watched a bunch of SpongeBob episodes, and dude, the show still holds up. Of the episodes I've watched, like those early seasons, I love them to death. They're so good. In fact,
100%.
While I was waiting for you to log on, I said I'm gonna watch Band Geeks now. And dude, I love Band Geeks. It is my favorite episode of the show.
Yeah,
I may be biased because I was in marching band in high school, but also, it is just such a funny episode. It's so funny, like banger joke after banger joke, and then the ending is like weirdly emotionally satisfying. it's absurd, but in the best way
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Seasons. You want to hear like maybe I don't know if this is like a hot take now, but it might be. My favorite season of the show is actually season 4. I think it did like the best of like combining like the typical SpongeBob humor, but having like a lot more character driven stories. Like I mentioned, Have You Seen the Snail earlier, and Patrick Smartpants. But there was also that episode. It's the episode called New Leaf, where Plankton tricks Mr. Krabs into thinking like he's not gonna go after the formula anymore, and he like opens up a gift shop and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And despite the twist of that episode being kind of obvious, it's still a really good episode that shows like Mr. Krabs and Plankton's whole relationship. And of course, there's also like the Skill Crane and Krusty Towers and just a lot of like really, really good episodes. But that's not to say if the first 3 seasons aren't also really good, because they still are. Honestly, season 3 might be my second favorite, like really close behind season 4. Yeah, I think like come on, like Krusty Krab training video and Wet Painters and Chocolate with Nuts, and what is it, the Jaws parody Clams. Yeah,
so good.
The Algae's Always Greener. Yep, great season. And I do really like the modern seasons as well. Are they different? Yeah, but honestly, I think they're still enjoyable and they still can be enjoyed as SpongeBob. I understand they're not for everyone, and I guess they're not as intelligent as the older episodes, but I still enjoy watching them quite a bit. That the thing with the Sandy movie especially is that like I think it's legitimately the only SpongeBob thing that I don't think I will ever watch again.
Oh yeah.
Like even with like episodes that I don't like, if they just happen to come on TV or something, like, yeah, I'll watch them. Like, I might not like them from a critical's perspective, but I'll still watch them because I still like watching the show,
Yeah.
But the Sandy movie, I'm just not gonna watch again.
Yeah.
I don't think.
I was like thinking about it. I'm just like, yeah, I watched it earlier in the year. It was awful. But then I'm thinking, well, we might as well talk about it on the podcast. But it has been a while since I've seen it, so I probably should rewatch it to refresh myself. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm never watching this again. I try not to be like, oh, I'm never watching this or I'm never watching this again with some movies, but then it's like, maybe I shouldn't say never because, hey, years ago I watched the original Roger Corman Little Shop of Horrors from 1960, and I thought it was one of the worst things I've ever seen. Fast forward 5 years later, I watched it again this year. I had such a blast with it. It's still a bad movie, but I had more fun with it this time. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll say never, but I've seen this movie twice now. It has been soul sucking every time I've seen it. I seriously have no reason to ever watch it again. It is a horrible, horrible movie.
Yeah.
One of the worst things ever, but at least SpongeBob in general is still good. I still like the first 2 movies and the show, and yeah, SpongeBob is still good in my mind.
Yeah. I guess, before we wrap up, I think we should talk about some of the upcoming movie projects that they have, because they actually have quite a bit.
Because people were asking me when I said, yeah, I'm doing a SpongeBob episode, they're like, are you going to do the Plankton movie? Because it's technically out there, but I'm like, no.
Yeah. The thing with the Plankton movie is that, like, oh, I cannot believe we forgot to mention that the Sandy movie actually got leaked before.
Yeah.
Like in January of this year, I believe.
Yeah, it got leaked. So a lot of my friends watched it and they're like, this is the worst piece of shit ever. I'm like, is it really? It's not even finished, guys. And then I watched it and I'm like, I watched it when it officially came out and I was like, oh yeah, no, this is fucking dog shit.
Yeah.
So then the Plankton movie came out, or the Plankton movie got leaked and people watched it and are like, this is the biggest piece of dog shit. I'm like, maybe I'll judge it when I see it when it actually comes out.
Here's the thing about the Plankton movie, though. I have actually, like, I mean, I don't know what the general consensus is, because I don't even think that many people saw it when it got leaked. It didn't gain as much widespread traction as the Sandy movie did, for sure.
Right.
But from what I've heard, people actually did end up liking it. And that's really funny, but also it also does kind of make sense, because from what I've seen, the movie does, like, unlike the Sandy movie, this one actually does have SpongeBob people working on it, and also Plankton's voice actor is co-writing the story, so that definitely helps a lot. So yeah, I haven't seen it because I don't really have the energy to watch leaks of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll just wait. I can watch other stuff in the meantime. I'll just wait, But from what I've seen, like the Plankton movie's been getting like a more positive reception, thankfully. And then the other thing is that they're making a fourth SpongeBob movie in like the series of theatricals.
Yep.
It's called The Search for SquarePants, and another interesting thing is that it's being directed by Derek Dryman, who was the creative director for the first 3 seasons. And so, honestly, I'm excited to see. I mean, I don't think it'll feel exactly like the first 3 seasons, but I feel like it very much could have some of that same spirit if he's directing it.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. The only other thing I know about it is that the Flying Dutchman's in it, and he's not being voiced by Brian Doyle Murray, but instead Mark Hamill. Which, I mean, hey,
Yeah, that was the thing I was gonna mention next, and like, I mean, that's not a bad decision. I don't think. Like, Mark Hamill's a great voice actor.
absolutely.
It's just kind of a weird decision. Like is the other guy retired or something?
He
Like,
might
why
be,
is he?
because I haven't heard him be in stuff in years. He has a very distinct voice. I like Brian Doyle Murray. In fact, I love him as the Flying Dutchman. But I guess maybe he is a little too old to be doing it now, and I guess he's retired or something.
Yeah,
but who knows?
He's also a Captain Knuckles from Flapjack.
Yep, Captain Knuckles from Flapjack. He's in Caddyshack. He's in Christmas Vacation. He's in Groundhog Day. He's in a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's gonna be a thing. And judging from what I was saying earlier about like the whole like, oh, they should just make a movie that's just like in the SpongeBob universe where they don't go to the surface. I think this has the best chance of being that, considering it's about the Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. I'm willing to go see it. I don't know if it'll be any good. I feel like Sponge on the Run and Sandy Cheeks movie really hurt me, but
I actively need to see it because it literally will be the first SpongeBob movie I've seen.
You of all people absolutely do need to see it because you're kind of the SpongeBob guy. So of course you're gonna see it. But I'll watch it too.
Bro. But that I think that month, I think December next year, like both of that and Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is gonna come out. So that's just gonna be like a fucking field month for me.
Next December is the month of Matt.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. In terms of, I will say that like, despite me, being the SpongeBob guy, I guess, of this whole thing, I haven't really been keeping up with the show as much as I used to recently. It's not because like I think, oh, it finally got bad or something like that. Not like that.
It's
just
been
that
busy.
it just hasn't been a top priority for me. Like
I get that.
I've been trying to get into other things other than this one show that I've been obsessing over for my whole life.
I hear that. Yeah, dude, so busy nowadays. So it's hard to keep up with things.
Yeah. I will say I have been watching the Patrick Star Show a lot, and I'm sorry, I love that show so much. It's such a good show, but I can understand, it's not everyone's cup of tea.
Maybe I'll watch it. Maybe I'll watch that Nostalgia Critic episode they did, but I don't know. It's not a top priority for me.
Yeah, I can understand that. But yeah, that whole Nostalgia Critic thing was kind of insane, though.
Oh, yeah.
I'm insane that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, because at first I'm just like, they didn't do that. They always do that in cartoons where they have fucking straw man characters of fat nerds at computers being like, this cartoon fucking sucks my dick, and it's just like, you really got them there. You're doing the biggest nerd stereotype ever in cartoons. But then no, he literally is dressed as the Nostalgia Critic. I was just like, oh my God, you can do that?
Yeah.
that blew me away. I was just like, holy shit, wait a minute.
Yeah. That's great. But yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about these movies.
It only took us 3 hours.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
I mean, hey, at least it wasn't the Alien episode.
Yeah, at least it's true. Yeah, we will never top the Alien episode in terms of length. I say that now, and then the next time I bring on William, he's just gonna hold me hostage for 10 hours. So as a joke, of course.
But yeah, this was really fun. Honestly, like in terms of like ideas for what I might want to do here in the future, I honestly would really like to do like a Looney Tunes episode in like the same caliber where it's like where we talk about like Space Jam 1 and 2 and then Back in Action. And then hopefully the new Porky and Daffy movie that's coming out.
Looney Tunes would go hard. I mean, I was thinking about that because I do own a couple of Looney Tune compilation DVDs, but it's just like, how would we tackle that, dude? That would be an insane.
Yeah.
That would be the 10-hour episode.
Yeah. That's why I was suggesting like the theatrical movies specifically.
Oh yeah. But yeah, no, totally. I know. Yeah, and you are a big fan of Looney Tunes. I do want to talk about Looney Tunes though, because again, yeah. Then Space Jam and Back in Action would be probably the ways to go with that. But
yeah,
well, that's for next time or whenever we get to it. So for this time, Matt, why don't you shout out your stuff, dude? Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter, Exit or X, whatever the hell you want to call it. I am a cartoonist and I do a lot of art. So if you like art, maybe follow me on Twitter and also Instagram as well, although I post everything on there. I post everything on Twitter usually. Instagram just kind of like a secondary thing. Unfortunately, I have a letterbox, but I don't really post like serious reviews on there just because it's a lot of work. And I do have a YouTube, but I don't really post on it. I don't have a podcast or of any kind. I don't really do reviews and stuff like that. I just wanted to do this because I love to talk about SpongeBob. But, you know, I do art. So if that's your thing, definitely follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I think I should probably do a drawing for like the 20th anniversary of the first movie. I might have to do that.
Yeah. Do like kind of a redraw of the poster or something like that.
Yeah. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Or I could do the fucking, like, what is it, like the Pooh's Adventures thing. I could do that.
Pooh's Adventures thing? Wait a minute.
The, like, those, like, weird, like, DeviantArt posts where they have, like, it's like the SpongeBob movie poster, but there's just, like, a shit ton of other characters on it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Or, like, the trend where people will take, like, cartoon characters or random characters and just put them in front of a TV, and the TV has, like, a speech bubble above it that says the second tower has hit the second tower has been hit or something like that.
Yeah, like that.
But if it's 2004, you can just be like, America has invaded Iraq or something like that, and it's the television. Nice. Yeah, let's call it a day there, Matt. Thanks for coming on, dude. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I thank you. I really liked being on here. Sorry if I'm stuttering a bunch. I'm not used to talking for 3 hours on end about something.
Hey, that's okay. You're not the first person to stutter on this podcast. I once stuttered.
But yeah, I would love to come on here again for like Looney Tunes or like maybe even like if you guys do a Terrifier episode, I would genuinely love to do that.
I know, yeah, we've talked about Terrifier, you and me, and then I know Puff wants to do one, so I'm thinking that'll be like the next one you'll be on is like whenever we eventually talk about Terrifier on the podcast. I'd love to have you on for that one. Yeah,
definitely. So yeah, I think that's really all I have to say. Thank you, Hal, for this opportunity. I know we've been this is something that we've been talking about like for at least like a year, I think.
It feels like it has been a long time. Yeah.
It was like an idea I brought up at one point, but we didn't really start getting on it until recently.
And now we've done it.
But yeah,
good for us.
Now we've done it. We've accomplished our goals,
and we never have to do it ever again. All right. Well.
So yeah.
Let's.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's call it now. Goodbye, everybody. See you all next time. Bye.
Goodbye, everyone. I'll remember you all in therapy.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, damn it! I should have said that. That was my quote in high school. That was my fucking senior quote in high school. Was goodbye, everyone. I'll remember you all in therapy.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Bye.